people for reasons and in ways that we weren't expecting, so we didn't think that COVID was responsible. But large numbers of nursing home residents, larger numbers died than were accounted for. And I'm trying to get this information from the Department of Health. I've requested through the Freedom of Information Law accounting for the exact number of nursing home residents that died during those weeks, and I suspect it will be far greater than the average numbers that come in a given month. And there are ways that you can apply some simple statistics to figure out when deaths are caused by something other than normal causes. And this is an indirect way to get at the information, but there's far greater numbers than I believe than it have been.
Well, he doesn't want an independent investigation, Cuomo. It's like pulling teeth to get the information. You think this is a cover-up right now?
I do. And you know that they publish their own investigation. But here's the irony, Mark. In a healthcare organization, if you have something happen or even have the risk of something happening that could put lives and limbs at risk, it's called a sentinel event. And if you do that as a healthcare organization, you're not allowed to investigate yourself. You have to get an outside agency to come in by their very own rules.
God damn it.
If a nursing home did something, let's say a patient almost wandered out of the building and almost went out the door, you have to call in an outside agency to investigate your organization. You can't do it yourself. So the mere fact that they're trying to say that they didn't do anything wrong is against their own regulations. It's incredible. They absolutely should have an outside agency come in, and it should be something like the Joint Commission.
Isn't it amazing that Congress has no interest? Cuomo hasn't been required to testify.
Well, they asked him to. They asked him to, but he refused. I think Steve Scalise and some...
The Republicans in the House, but Nancy Pelosi, and she doesn't seem to want to get to the bottom of it, and I don't hear any Republicans in the Senate.
No. But in the state legislature, they've just had hearings, and I think they're making an effort, and it's actually a bipartisan effort, but I don't know where it's going to go. But thankfully, the issue has been kept public in the public eye, and as long as it is, he will not be viewed as the hero that he thinks he is.
He was actually doing a victory lap with charts and everything. How do you live with yourself? I mean, it's just amazing to me. You don't have to answer that. Listen, you have been terrific. Call any time, Elaine Healy, and you deserve some kind of medal. Because as far as I'm concerned, you alerted me to this. And this has been an issue that we have focused on a great deal, particularly after you spoke to us for several months after that. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you for all you do.
And God bless you.
And you as well.
Just terrific. Just terrific. Ari, Stamford, Connecticut, the great WABC. Ari, go.
Hey, Mark, big fan, long-time listener.
Listen, you're not Avi Berkowitz, are you?
Similar name, but no, I do.
I just want to make sure you're not calling under a pseudonym. Go right ahead.
No. Joe Biden takes credit for this historic deal between Israel and United Arab.
First of all, isn't that? What a classless, appalling buffoon. He's in his basement. Everybody else is doing the hard work. This administration pulls off with no other administration, and he takes credit.
But you know what, Mark? You know what? He's right. Because under Obama propped up Iran, gave him $150 billion, the disastrous nuclear Iran deal, and he pushed all the moderate states towards Israel. So, Biden is right in the way that they did help out with this deal, because now all the moderate countries are.
The problem is Biden's now saying he would reintroduce that deal with Iran. So in other words, he would undermine all the efforts, he would undermine all the incentives that are in place now, and we go back to square nothing, or square zero.
Well, I don't think Biden knows what he's doing, or I'm not just
Bernie Sanders does, and he runs the place.
I agree.
Let me ask you another question about the Democrat Party. They're all upset. I see this pathetic site that Dan Abrams started called Mediaite, Left-Wing Kooks. I see others, too, about this woman. I don't even know who she is. Apparently she won a Republican primary, likely to be a member of Congress. She's into this Q ideology or conspiracy, whatever that is. I don't even know what that is. And they keep pounding, and I'm thinking, you celebrate Omar, where the Democrats actually endorsed her, and she's a full-throated Jew hater. You celebrate Rashid Tlaib, who is the same thing, a full-throated Jew hater. She gets the backing of the establishment Democrats, the backing of Pelosi, the backing of Bernie Sanders, and nobody says a damn thing about it.
100%. How does Pelosi go on record and say that she is pro-Israel, supports Jews, and she backs these anti-Semites?
I'll tell you how. Because unfortunately, my brother, there's enough liberal Jews in this country, like liberal Catholics and so forth, who put their party first and their morality and their common sense second. That's exactly what's going on. Liberalism is an ideology, as my wife likes to say, it's a religion, and it's all powerful. It's all powerful. I mean, it's more than anything else. It's like the Democrats. The Democrats, it's about party, not country. It's about power, party, not country. Go ahead, sir.
Exactly. No, Mark, I 100% I echo exactly what you're saying. And you have all these liberal Jews who will put the Democrat Party...
so these supplies came in with bigger shipments.
By the way, we can say this. We're both Jewish. Go right ahead.
Exactly. And and I know you just had an Orthodox Jew on earlier, and I just want to tell you I'm a proud Orthodox Jew living in Stamford, Connecticut. And I support this president 100% from day one. When he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, when he recognized the Golan Heights, Judea and Samaria are homeland for Abraham.
Well, you're going to have to get brothers and sisters out there voting en masse because, our liberal so-called brothers and sisters outnumber us. Ari, I got to go. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. We'll be right back. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, is one of the fastest growing organizations in America, now over 2 million conservative members strong, and I'm one of them. AMAC believes in and stands up for the values that we constitutional conservatives care about. More than talk, AMAC fights. A full-time presence in Washington, AMAC pushes back against reckless spending, disasters like Medicare for All, and the expanding reach of the federal government. And beyond advocacy, joining AMAC gives you access to a wealth of benefits and discounts, including special member-only rates on car insurance, travel discounts, cell phone plans, and a hell of a lot more. And if that's not enough, you'll get AMAC's bi-monthly magazine full of insightful articles on issues that matter to most of us, we conservatives. As I said, I'm an AMAC member, and you should be too. Join today at amac.us. That's AMAC.us. Stop supporting the liberal agenda that the other 50-plus organization has been pushing for. Join AMAC instead. AMAC.us. Who did I want to go to here, Mr. Producer? I think I wanted, yes, Mark, Manhattan, New York. The great WABC. Go right ahead, sir.
Mark, Kamala Harris says we have to wear masks, but she's slick. She said we have to wear masks for the next 3 months. She said 3 months. If we look at the calendar, 3 months just happens to take us exactly 1 week past the election. It's also the beginning of the flu season. It took Kamala Harris only 1 day on the stump, accidentally to reveal the left's fraudulent plan to use the pandemic as their only strategy for winning the election. For the left, there will be no pandemic after the election. They just want mail-in ballots before the election. They say they follow science, but science has been following leftist politics for a couple of days now. And no one in the mainstream media is going to call her out. But just like Joe Biden, she'll make more mistakes, and she will call herself out.
It's a brilliant point. The 3 months, you're right, just happens to take you right through Election Day. And you know what that mask is when everybody's wearing them, even on occasions when you don't need to? It's the scarlet letter. So they want you to wear the scarlet letter. I wouldn't have to wear this, but for Trump. Then they're going to blame Trump. You're wearing masks because of Trump. They want to keep the economy shut down. You're unemployed because of Trump. Their unions want to keep the schools closed. Well, their kids aren't going to school because of Trump. When Trump is trying to do the opposite of all this. It's a brilliant, brilliant point, and you're right. God forbid, if they win, you watch, all of a sudden their policies will change with respect to that. And then comes out the iron fist with the brass knuckles. And that's when our liberty is threatened in every way. Because they're going to view this as a year or two where they can do whatever they want until they're really found out. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen. Brilliant call, Mark. I appreciate it. So I won't be here tomorrow. I hope you'll tune in 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can DVR it. Life, Liberty, and Levin on Sunday on Fox. It's going to be a massive program. Very, very important. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. And don't forget Levin TV. We have a great Levin TV tomorrow night, too. All right, folks, you be safe, and God bless each and every one of you. Keep your chins up. All four of them.
From the Westwood One Podcast Network.
They got it. We're all... So, you could get a bunch of prescriptions and then drive around to every drugstore in the state, or you could rob someone who's already done that. So hit this other lab and...
别来看我的厉害！混蛋！我中枪了！干嘛的？
告诉我你还行。
有人受伤了。来人，我们的人受伤了。
They got it. So, we know a security company's moving what we need. We just don't know which van they're using. Keep hitting their cars till you get the supplies.
Drop it! Put partners down! Shows! Oh no!
That was insane!
Motion at your stick-up cam. Motion at your stick-up cam.
This episode of Ridiculous History is brought to you by Boise State. Why is America the government? Apple,
You want yours. We're looking 10
ridiculous history. Yo ho ho, ridiculous historians. I'm sorry, I just had to get it out of my system. Alright, well, I'm Ben. This is part 2 of our exploration of the little-known story of Jamaica and Jewish pirates.
Hi, I'm Noel Ben. Was that just a drawn-out yo, or were those meant to be ho-ho-hos in between as a piratey ref?
Yeah, piratey ref. Did it sound like a yo or a yo ho ho?
I just was making sure that we're on the Zoom, and then I was a little bit, it dragged it out, did that thing where it digitally kind of stretched it. So on my end, it just kind of sounded like you were saying, yo, ridiculous historians, welcome to the show. But no, I kid. But yeah, today, we did this intentional two-parter, and I know the first one seemed a little on the short side, but we felt like it was a good kind of primer to now get you into some really cool dives into some of the most notable Jewish pirates and privateers from throughout history. So what do you say we jump right in with Simon Reyes, a.k.a. the Great Jew?
Yes, let's walk the plank of the podcast with the help of our super producer, Casey Pegram. No doubt brandishing the scimitar behind us, forcing us along. You're right. This guy was known as the Great Jew. Also, as we go through this episode, please, if you're playing along at home, let us know what your ideal pirate nickname would be. I think that's the coolest thing. If you're a pirate, you get a nickname, right? We talked about cool professional nicknames in the past. But Reyes had the moniker the Great Jew. He and his family, like so many of the people we mentioned in part 1 of the show, they fled the Spanish Inquisition in the early 1500s. And first they went to Turkey. And then it was in modern-day Izmir, Turkey, where Sinan became the right-hand man of a fellow named Hayreddin Barbarossa, one of the most famed pirates of all time. Barbarossa would eventually go on to become a sultan and a commander in the Ottoman Navy, and these guys had their own interesting take on the pirate flag.
They sure did, and just one quick little snippet of backstory on Sinan. He was born to Sephardic Jewish parents who fled Spain and then, like you said, located into the Ottoman Empire. But I thought the distinction of Sephardic Jews was interesting because I wasn't intimately familiar with this tradition. And it specifically refers to descendants of Jews who lived in Spain and Portugal from the later centuries of the Roman Empire until they were essentially forced out of those countries in the last decades of the 15th century. And that's from Britannica there, just to give credit where credit is due. But this is something I wasn't intimately familiar with, so always interesting to learn about new kind of cultural offshoots. But yes, to your point, Ben, about their kind of interesting spin on the Jolly Roger, which we heard from you last episode, did have some variations. Theirs had a 6-sided star, very much seeming to be a reference to the Jewish Star of David in place of that smiling skeleton.
And they were a dynamic duo on the high seas. Probably their biggest victory came in 1538 during something called the Battle of Preveza, right off the coast of Greece. Ottoman forces, led by these two guys, defeated an entire flotilla of armed ships from Christian countries that had been kind of assembled or justice leagued by Pope Paul III. This victory of theirs ensured that the Ottoman forces would dominate the Mediterranean for generations to come. And this is where Sinan earned his nickname, his street name, the Great Jew. You know who gave it to him? His enemies on the Spanish side of the conflict.
Totally. Yeah, it makes me think of the character in Inglourious Bastards, the one with the baseball bat, who's bashing in heads all the time. He gets his nickname from his enemies too. It was the Bear Jew, right? Because he was known for bashing heads. So you always know if you get a pretty cool sounding nickname from your enemies, you're doing something right. You're striking fear into the right hearts. You know what I mean?
I still think that, the Spanish forces at this point were like, why not throw in some hate speech? While we're here, let's just also be insulted. I don't know what I mean? I don't know how they meant it to be received. But I agree with you. It is a very badass nickname. People were so intimidated by this guy or looked up to him, depending on where they stood in the conflict, that they began spreading rumors of his sorcerous powers. He was so good at navigating the seas that people started saying he had to use magic to do it. They were like, there's only one way. I love picturing this conversation. It's a bunch of other sailors meeting up, and they're like, look, guys, we know we're just mainly winging it out there. How does Sinan know where he's going all the time? And someone else said, I think it's magic, bro. And they were like, yeah, because that was a sufficient explanation of things at the time.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, wasn't part of that kind of anti-Semitic attitude and almost fear of Jews as having as being like witches or something, or as possessing some kind of magical powers? You often hear kind of outdated jokes about. I mean, even in like that fantastic film Jojo Rabbit by Taika Waititi, there's a character, I don't want to spoil anything about the movie, but there's a child who refers to Jews as being like having the ability to hypnotize you or something like that, like vampire rules or whatever. And I think that sort of attitude about like they're using witchcraft to do this navigation is probably a pretty widespread idea.
And another way to further dehumanize people, really think it all the way through. So, interestingly enough, you can read more about Barbarossa and Sinan's and adventures in the 5-volume book of Barbarossa's memoirs that he dictated to Sinan. They currently reside in the Istanbul University Library. So this guy's having an adventure that most people don't know about, which is crazy. I would love to see the film, which I know I've been saying in like every episode we do, but so many of these stories are just perfect. They're so cinematic. Okay, we can't spend all our time on this guy, though. Let's say we move on to another great nickname, the Pirate Rabbi.
Yeah, Samuel Palash. Or Palaszczuk? I'm going to go with Palash. What do you think? We're probably going to get corrected either way. Let's just stick with it. Yeah, this guy wasn't just your run-of-the-mill son of Abraham. He was actually a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Shmuel Palachi, and he is said to have taken part in some pretty serious pirate raids against Spanish and Dutch ships, which would have been under the privateer side. Isn't that right, Ben?
Yeah, he was working for the Dutch government, and then he was also working for the Sultan of Barbary in Morocco. He was instrumental in one of the very first treaties between European and Middle Eastern powers. That's the 1610 agreement that guaranteed peace between Morocco and the Netherlands. So, despite the fact that he had trained as a rabbi, he obviously felt more called to this life on the high seas as a privateer, but he was still a man of faith. He was still pious, and one of the rules on his ship was that the members of the crew had to donate a tenth of their loot, I'll just say a cut of their booty, to charity.
Yeah. Lean into it, dude. I love it.
And he also kept things kosher on his ship, which, if you think about that, that seems like at some point it could get a little tough, right?
Yeah.
Kosher.
I mean, it takes a lot of effort, and certainly you don't have the luxury of having access to like all the things when you're far away at sea. But yeah, that whole aspect of like donating to charity, that's the real kicker for me. That's fantastic. So in 1614, Morocco and Spain went to war with each other, and Palash was responsible for heading up a small Moroccan fleet that was destined for a conflict with Spanish ships, and actually was able to be successful and capture them. He was, though, arrested by the Spanish ambassador and then tried under Spanish law for piracy. There's a letter to a Dudley Carleton, who's the British ambassador to Venice then, and he summed up the life of this Jewish pirate thusly. And this comes from AISH.com. I'm not familiar with the words, so forgive me if I try to spell it and mispronounce it, which is a really great resource for Jewish culture and heritage and all kinds of history and cool storytelling. Highly recommend it. But 8 little known facts about Jewish pirates, and they have this quote from Dudley Carleton. And keep in mind that maybe some of this language might sound a little charged. I'm just reading it from the historical record. Quote, "Here is a Jew pirate arrested that brought 3 prizes of Spaniards into Plymouth. He shall likely pass out of here well enough, for he has league and license under the king's hand for his free egress and regress, which was not believed until he made proof of it."
Okay, yeah, so eventually they realized he is approved by the highest authority to basically do what he wants, right? Imagine, we talk about it sometimes in spy novels, right? The idea of a license to kill. But imagine if there was a country where you literally got a printed letter that you could whip out that says something like, super producer Casey Pegram has the express authorization of the U.S. government to do whatever he wants. Let him go.
Yep.
I would love that. I would probably get into some really thought out hijinks.
Back of the truck, ready to move.
Flash was acquitted.
You're done.
He was set free. When he passed away in 1670, he was given a hero's funeral. Every single member of the Jewish community in Amsterdam got together and marched in his funeral procession. They were not alone. They were joined by royalty, and they were joined by elders of the city itself. So this person had an immense amount of support and recognition in his time.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, bust another myth about pirates. I mean, this guy seemed like a pretty benevolent pirate at the end of the day, and had a bit of a moral code, which I appreciate, because you think of pirates as just, being wanton and not following the rules, and this guy was definitely a different spin on that. All right, let's move on to another amazing nickname. Not a nickname, but like a gang name. This one's about Subital and the Brotherhood of the Black Flag.
Which sounds like definitely a Black Flag tribute band, right?
Totally.
I'm not alone in that? Okay.
No.
So this guy was a Jewish physician living in the 16th century, an educated man, and he was an explorer of what would now be known as the Americas. He's also credited by some with introducing the potato to Europeans, which, nice one, man. I've been thinking about this during quarantine. You know what I miss? I miss having fries, French fries, that I didn't cook.
Yes, you haven't really been doing much. You haven't done like a drive-through. You haven't been doing Chick-fil-A or any of that.
Yeah, I went to a drive-through once, but usually I've been staying in and cooking. It's a little healthier, something to do. I've been cooking some weird stuff.
No, I know. And you were talking about you're gonna have a seafood extravaganza with your little Japanese grill after we get done recording. I think you inspired me to go a seafood route myself for dinner and my mom visiting. But, well, speaking of the sea and food, we were talking about potatoes a minute ago, and now we're talking back about Subital and the Brotherhood of the Black Flag. He formed a bond, something of an alliance with another famous explorer's son, who realized as well that the profession of piracy was a pretty good racket, and that was the son of Sir Francis Drake, Henry. So the two became inseparable, and they started this organization, if you want to call it that, known as the Brotherhood of the Black Flag. It was absolutely a band of pirates that was hell-bent on attacking as many Spanish ships as they could right off of the coast of a place that I think you have very recently been, modern-day Chile.
Yeah, that's right. They are said to have buried 6,000 pounds of Spanish gold and an even larger amount of silver near a harbor in Chile. At this time, no one has found that buried treasure. However, treasure hunters have found some documents that were partially written in Hebrew that they believe may have been written by Subital himself. So, it is quite possible that someone off the coast of Chile may one day find the hidden treasure of the Brotherhood of the Black Flag.
Absolutely, Ben. And just for reference, if you wanted to check out this area in Chile today, if you ever find yourself back on a plane, or maybe you live there, it is near the Guayacan harbor today. And that's spelled Guayacan. I think Guayacan is probably a decent pronunciation there, but let us know.
This episode of Ridiculous History is brought to you by Audible. You know, let's be honest, a lot of us are at home right now, and we're looking for new things to learn, new things to hear, new things to experience, and that's where Audible comes in.
It's true, and while you can still, of course, get the bread and butter of Audible, co-created with Thrive Global, these short, soothing audio experiences lets you meditate with Diddy, drift off with Nick Jonas, bathe in sound with Sarah Oster, and more. And Audible now has expanded Audible Originals monthly for existing Audible members.
Yeah, let's face it, we can all get fatigued from staring at screens all the time, and listening to something is a great way to occupy your mind while still giving your eyes that much-needed break. You can listen along with your family on an Alexa device. It's a great way to spend time together. One that I'm particularly over the moon about is the Sandman Audible Original, which is available for pre-order now. It's 10 hours and 54 minutes. So, guys, that's what I'm going to be doing as soon as it comes out.
Yes, and I just pre-ordered it myself for just one Audible credit. And you can get your own Audible credits today when you sign up.
That's right. All you have to do is visit audible.com/ridiculous or text ridiculous to 500-500.
That's audible.com/ridiculous or text ridiculous to 500-500.
This episode of Ridiculous History is brought to you by Blinds.com. Like a lot of people these days, we spend a good amount of time indoors. That's when it really hits you just how important a good set of blinds can be.
Oh, it's true, and especially now that I've moved out into a new place without a roommate, I can walk around the house naked. I can do Zoom calls in the nude, and you really need a good set of blinds so that your neighbors don't really start resenting you for your nudist tendencies. When the world outside is hectic, your home is everything, and it's easy and affordable to turn your home into even more of a sanctuary with Blinds.com.
Here's the deal, folks. Blinds.com makes it simple to shop top-quality blinds, shades, and interior shutters from home with easy online ordering, which I love, and free shipping, which I love even more.
Yeah, and Blinds.com actually has experts that really know their window treatments. I'm serious, these guys are legit. They understand that window treatments are one of those household items that you just don't think about, but can make a massive impact on the look and feel of your home.
Yeah, you don't need to do a full renovation. By simply changing what's on your windows, you can change the way light comes into your home. This creates a completely different, unique, and distinct feel.
So go to Blinds.com and just take a look at all the options they have. Things like faux wood blinds, cellular and roller shades, even outdoor shades. And if you're nervous about trying them, there's really no reason to be at all.
Yeah, Blinds.com has helped millions of homeowners through the process. Plus, they guarantee the perfect fit, whether you DIY or have them measure and install everything for you.
So, why not go right now and see how much you can save at Blinds.com?
Rules and restrictions apply.
Who do we have next, Ben?
Here we go. We've been setting up for this. We talked about heists, talked about pirates. Now we're talking about a pirate heist. It comes to us courtesy of Moshe Cohen Hanarkis, or Moses Cohen Enriquez, depending on where you go with the translation. He was one of the most famous of the revenge-seeking Jewish privateers and pirates. He started his life living in secrecy as a Jewish person because he grew up under the Inquisition in Portugal. He was, at a time, one of the most well-known, prominent, successful merchants in the capital of Portugal, Lisbon. And then he was discovered to be Jewish and to be practicing his faith in 1605. He and 150 other people were publicly tortured. And this changed Cohen's life. He decided that he was going to work against Spain and Portugal and fight against the injustices of the Inquisition. First, he had to escape.
Yeah, that'll certainly do it. And he did that thing. He got out of Amsterdam, and he pretty quickly seemed to find his way into the good graces of the Dutch. He became essentially a spy for them, for the Dutch Navy. And he settled in Jamaica, which was already starting to become this kind of safe haven for these Jewish expats. And he worked with the Dutch on behalf of the Netherlands to attack these Spanish vessels and just kind of be a thorn in the side of these colonial ambitions to take over the New World. Because everyone was vying for a lot of that real estate, right?
Yeah, that's right. This is part of a massive land and resource grab on the part of the European powers. Cohen even teams up with one of the most feared pirates of the day, a man named Sir Henry Morgan. And Sir Henry Morgan is a dangerous, dangerous dude, right? But this land grab, this age of expansion panic that so many European powers are going through makes them bend the rules a little bit more. And so the Dutch and British governments actually, they're not very loud about it, but they back up Cohen and Henry Morgan.
Would that be Captain Henry Morgan of the rum fame?
The Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica?
Yeah. So remember, Captain Morgan's? Surely it's named after him.
Yeah, I mean, one would imagine. Captain Morgan was Sir Henry Morgan, I guess, is a Welsh privateer, and he was a plantation owner who eventually became the Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica. So he was in the halls of power, but to be clear, what I'm talking about when I say the quiet support is the Dutch and British governments quietly supporting Cohen in his partnership. Sir Henry Morgan was already kind of like above reproach in a lot of ways because he was so powerful.
And just for the record, confirmed, Captain Morgan Rum is named after Sir Henry Morgan for his adventures in the Caribbean.
True. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me, right?
And drink responsibly, and you too can live like the captain.
You know, I wonder why they never had a tagline like "promote yourself," or even use that "I'm the captain now" meme. That'd be great.
Got what we
That
need.
would be good. You know, when I was thinking in my mind, I was confusing the Captain Morgan's tagline with the Captain Crunch tagline, which I think is superior. Is "You and the captain make it happen."
Oh, there we go. Yeah, drink responsibly.
And eat your sugary cereals responsibly, kids.
Right. Eat your breakfast candy responsibly. That still baffles me. So here, let's fast forward to the heist. We promised you a heist. Where's the heist? In 1628, Cohen helps the Dutch West India Company pull one of the most profitable sea heists in the entire history of piracy. They steal like over $1 billion worth of gold and silver from a Spanish fleet off the coast of Cuba. And when we say $1 billion, that's us roughly adjusting for how much this gold and silver would be worth in today's age. But it's still kind of tough to get a super accurate calculation in. It was a lot of money.
But wait a minute, Ben. I thought the Dutch West India Company was a legitimate business. What are they doing pulling off heists?
Dutch West India Company. Well, specifically, Cohen helped Admiral Piet Hein. So if we're going to be all unfun and factual about it, the Dutch West India Company is probably not officially sanctioning this heist. But without doing a whole episode about them yet, I wouldn't put it past them, man. They are a very bad group.
Oh, but no. There's a thing, and you just look up Dutch West India in Britannica, Dutch West India Company. It says using booty acquired from the capture by the Dutch seaman Piet Hein of part of a Spanish treasure fleet, the company challenged the Portuguese hold on Brazil, beginning in 1630, and attained its greatest success during the administration of Count John Maurice. So they definitely were in on it,
and they're definitely sanctioning it. Yeah, we should do at some point a story about some of the many crimes of those organizations, because even if you know a lot about them, you might not know the whole terrible story. So, not long after successfully pulling off this massive sea heist, Cohen starts his own pirate island, because off the coast of Brazil, which you mentioned earlier, and then once Portugal takes over the area, Cohen becomes this advisor to Captain Henry Morgan. Drink responsibly.
Indeed. And then, Cohen does finally kind of retire, I guess. He's getting up there in years. Sir Henry Morgan becomes lieutenant governor of Jamaica and actually pardoned Cohen. So Cohen was living in the clear, and he stayed in Jamaica until he passed away, living the life of a civilian, but having had some hella adventures. The pirate's life was certainly for him, but he knew when to say when, just like you should when you're drinking Captain Morgan's rum.
That's right, and that's a lovely pirate stereotype to bust. Not all pirates died on the high seas in, a wave of treasure and blood falling to cannon fire. Some people were actually able to retire, which I thought was pretty cool. And now I think we have time for one more. Someone who's been called, occasionally, the most famous Jewish pirate, Jean Lafitte. He was born in France in about 1780.
I had no idea John Lafitte was a Jewish pirate. Certainly heard of him from Lafitte's blacksmith shop in New Orleans, which I believe is the oldest bar still in operation there, or possibly in the United States, since it's been around for a very, very long time. And it's a pretty fun little dive bar to check out. They have really good hurricanes. But yeah, Jean Lafitte was born in France in about 1780, like we said. And there is a pretty controversial work called The Journal of Jean Lafitte. Controversial that it may or may not have been written by him. Or it could be some kind of forgery. It could have been written by a third party. He does claim that his mother's father was a Spanish Jew who was subjected to torture under the Inquisition. And much like some of the previous entries in this list, seeing that happen to his family created a lifelong hatred for Spain and for, obviously, the Spanish Inquisition, and decided that he wanted to wreck their shop, man. Like, just absolutely be another thorn in the side of the Spanish Armada, right? So he wanted to mess with their money because they had these holdings in the New World, and that's what the Inquisition was absolutely, like, burning their way across the land.
So Jacques moves to New Orleans. Escape the Inquisition. He doesn't move alone. He brings his brother Pierre, and together they found a blacksmith shop, and they do pretty well. But there's a conspiracy afoot because they have a second secret profession. They have commissions from the Republic of Cartagena to intercept Spanish boats. So while they're operating their blacksmith shop, they carry on this secluded interdiction career from a secluded colony in Barataria Bay off the coast of New Orleans. That's cool. Secret pirates.
It is super cool. And from that same article from jpost.com, Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean, they have a really great quote from a professor by the name of Edward Bernard Glick, who wrote an article called Lafitte's Jewish Origins in the Jerusalem Post back in 2006. And he says Lafitte was also a Sephardic Jew, along with his first wife. And Glick points out that not only did Lafitte run a single pirate ship, he had a whole fleet of them that he kind of ran, like a mob boss almost, from his blacksmith shop, which also was a site for fencing stolen pirate loot.
That's my favorite part, by the way. You know, you come for the horseshoes, and then you stay for the emeralds, right? Or maybe like a cursed skull. I don't know. I don't know what kind of stuff they're fencing in this pirate shop. This episode of Ridiculous History is brought to you by Quip. Folks, has your morning or evening routine changed recently? I mean, mine certainly has. I'm working from home all the time. And more often, I'm getting things delivered right to my door instead of going to the store. Of course, that means things like groceries, household cleaners, but that also means things that matter for my oral health. And that's where Quip comes in. Let's start with the idea of brushing our teeth in general. 75% of us use old, worn-out bristles that are ineffective, and even more people forget to floss daily. Good health starts with good habits, and Quip makes this easy by delivering all the oral care essentials you need to brush and to floss better. Here's the really neat part. The Quip electric toothbrush has these timed sonic vibrations with 30-second pulses that help guide you toward that dentist-recommended 2-minute cleaning routine. There's even a sized-down version for the kids in the crowd. The Quip brush head, toothpaste, and floss refills are automatically delivered on a dentist-recommended schedule every 3 months for just $5 a pop. So join over 3 million happy customers who practice good oral health care easily and affordably with Quip, starting at just $25. And if you go to getquip.com/ridiculous right now, like today, you'll get your first refill free. That's your first refill free at getquip.com/ridiculous. That's spelled get, QUIP.com/ridiculous. Quip, the Good Habits Company.
Today's episode is brought to you by Meow Mix. Looking for a cat food with chart-topping taste? Head to Target and pick up Meow Mix, the cat food causing perdemonium everywhere, with 100% complete and balanced nutrition for various life stages. Shop with Target Circle and save 15%. Meow Mix cat food, the only one cats ask for by name.
So, years before the Battle of New Orleans, and before the War of 1812, he's already got beef with the authorities, and there's this very strange flex, a weird flex that he does. I bet Miles and Jack would love this. The Louisiana governor, William C.C. Claiborne, places a reward of $500 on Lafitte's head. And what does he do? He retaliates by putting a $5,000 bounty on the head of the governor. He's telling the governor of Louisiana, stop playing with broke boy rules. You know what I mean?
Seriously, holy cow! I wouldn't say that's a weird flex as much as it's just a power move. of epic proportions. So, okay, we know where this guy stands. But then in the War of 1812, Lafitte, in his capacity as a spy, actually warned American troops of the British invasion, but not like the Beatles one. This is like, a military invasion. And he offered to help out Andrew Jackson, who was the general defending New Orleans at the time, with some of his top guys
we're still in
from his
business.
pirate crew.
LJC with the sign.
And he said, "We'll do this. We'll help you out, Andy." Which I'm sure he called Andrew Jackson Andy, right? He said, "We'll help you out, Andy. All you have to do is give us a full pardon for anything we ever may have or may have not done. Deal?" And Andy says, "Yeah, deal." The pirate gang does a great job. Jackson, in fact, later in life, Jackson goes on to call Lafitte one of the ablest men of the Battle of New Orleans. So it sounds like he earned that pardon.
100%, and he takes it easy for a little while, but a couple years after this massive, hero moment, he starts back up into pirating. Pirating. I'm going to go with pirating. It's just fun to say. But he moves shop to Galveston, Texas, and brings close to 1,000 buccaneers along with him, and he established like a pirate community that he referred to as his kingdom, named Campeche on the barrier island of Galveston, which is a thing. It's on the Gulf Coast. I didn't realize Galveston was an island. And they lived under the rule of, at the time, the Nueva España colony of Mexico. And he partnered up with a Portuguese Jew by the name of João de la Porta, and some of their biggest named, heist buds were folks like Jim Bowie of the Alamo fame, also known for the knife that was named after him.
So until he passed away in 1825, Jean Lafitte remained one of the most feared pirates of the Spanish Main. And the Spanish Main is the eastern coast of Spain's possessions in the New World at this time. You can see traces of his story everywhere in New Orleans. There's a national park named after him. The author we mentioned in part 1 of this series even posits that this man was the inspiration for Johnny Depp in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But I still feel like the inspiration is that guy from the Rolling Stones, not Keith Stewart. Keith Stewart is a guy I went to high school with, and if you're hearing this, Keith, I hope you're well. The other Keith.
Keith Richards.
Yes.
And he played his father in one of the movies. I think that was a nod to how he definitely was. I think he's probably inspired, like maybe Lafitte was part of the historical precedent, but certainly his mannerisms were all Keith Richards.
Yeah, so maybe at that point we're talking about the creative inspiration of the screenwriters, or the scriptwriters, and the creative inspiration of the actors. But there you have it, folks. For a long, long time, the stories of these privateers and pirates were rarely explored in the history books. And that began to change in the last decade or so when historical graveyards were unearthed in the Caribbean that revealed, the extent of the Jewish population that had gone there seeking safety from the Inquisition, and also helped us understand that several individuals in these communities were indeed pirates.
Yeah, that's right. And back in 2007, the Caribbean Volunteer Expeditions, which is a nonprofit cultural preservation society in the Caribbean, has started to take a lot of steps in compiling a lot of these research materials and artifacts and inventorying these grave sites, like you mentioned, Ben, to really shine a light on this mainly, kind of lost part of history, transcribing epitaphs, and just creating a wealth of information that folks that are interested, that want to find out more about the Jewish pirate community that was forced out of Spain largely due to fear of being persecuted and tortured by the absolutely horrific Spanish Inquisition.
I say this with sincerity. What an astonishing story, and how fortunate we are to be able to learn more about it in the present day. I'm pretty happy that we made this a two-parter.
Oh, I am too, and I did want to add one last little thing that I think is super interesting, and I'd always wondered about. Because of this massive, let's not forget, like this was about Jamaica specifically, about these Jewish pirates that got their start after immigrating to Jamaica, in addition to other places, but that was sort of the big one in terms of like how much of the parliament they made up in terms of the seats, and that has a lot to do with maintains a big part of the heritage of Jamaica, which you think of oftentimes intertwined with Rastafarianism. And as it turns out, the concept of Rastafarianism has a lot of connections with Judaism. Their Messiah, the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, was said to have been descended from King Solomon. And obviously one of their most powerful symbols in Rastafarianism is the Lion of Judah, and Rastafarians also keep kosher.
Yeah, there are so many misconceptions about Rastafarianism here in the West. It probably deserves its own episode as well. There is fascinating history there. Of course, piracy is not over. Piracy continues in different parts of the world, right? You've probably seen stories about piracy in the Middle East or off the coast of Somalia recently. But this age of piracy seems to be unique because of the way it meshed and evolved in concert with the age of maritime expansion from Europe and the one of the many waves of anti-Semitism that Europe experienced at the time. So Tricorn, hats off to you, pirates of history. I don't know, I'm in a weird spot with this because I don't want to completely condone the behaviors of these people, which at times had to be brutal and violent and bloody. But also, I love the idea of fighting back against this institutional evil of the Inquisition. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And you got to give them props for their open-mindedness culturally and allowing folks that were basically cast off, if not outright, hunted by certain individuals in power, and bringing them into their ranks and not judging them for their heritage or any of that stuff. So that's pretty cool and very punk rock, if you ask me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great way to segue into this. Noel, Casey, we would be doing a terrible job if we didn't include some of the cool parts of real-life pirate code. This comes to us from Mark Mancini over at Mental Floss. Some of these rules might surprise you. So we talked about voting, mentioned voting. That's awesome. They also said you can't steal from other pirates. I guess honor among thieves. Oddly enough, they said nobody can gamble, which feels like a weird vice to isolate, but I guess it was bad for life on the ship. Everybody had a bedtime, they had a curfew.
Oh my gosh, lights out, or you get a spanking.
Yeah. They also had to always be ready to tangle.
Each man must keep his piece, cutlass, and pistols at all times clean and ready for action. I just love this piece, cutlass, and pistols.
Yeah. I like how they say piece, cutlass, and pistols because you gotta wonder, what's the piece?
What's the piece? I thought the piece was the pistol.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a bolo.
Or a side piece, maybe, like a little one you keep in your pirate boot.
Yeah, or like a mace, or like a frisbee. I don't know. Tell us what you think the best pirate piece would be. They also said never bring your date home, right? Most of these things did not have instant fatal punishment, but if you brought a person of any sort with you for romantic purposes onto the ship, you would be put to death.
Yeah, a lot of things punishable by death or marooning, which I guess just means abandoning you on a desert island with nothing but maybe a mixtape of your favorite songs. And one last one I'd love to point to, because it is kind of progressive, is the way that Mental Floss puts it is lose a limb, get workers' comp. And here's the code. Every man who shall become a cripple or lose a limb in the service shall have 800 pieces of 8 from the common stock, and for lesser hurts proportionately. Pieces of 8 being a very popular and widely accepted Spanish coin that I think were even American legal tender until 1857.
What a ride. Oh man, we busted a lot of stereotypes here. We talked a little bit about the complex cultural situation, but still, like the 6 or 7 year old in me is so into the idea of just hopping on a boat and living life on the high seas. I don't think I would want to do it with a crew, though. I want to be like Kevin Costner in Waterworld and just have like my own thing in a system. You guys remember Waterworld? That's one of Casey's favorite films, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gene Triplehorn turned in a tour de force performance, as did Dennis Hopper. And I hear the ride at Universal's pretty cool. But wait a minute, Ben. How would you feel about more like a Tom Hanks and Castaway kind of situation? What would be your inanimate object that you would anthropomorphize?
That wouldn't be a computer with a satellite link. That's a good question. If you had to anthropomorphize something on a desert island, I would try to make like a really cool sculpture or something. Leave a mark after I'm done. As far as companionship, I'd probably see if I could befriend some of the native fauna. You know what I mean? And have like a sidekick bird or a mammal of some sort. Because I don't know if you can befriend a fish.
Perhaps there would be corvids on this island where you wind up. I know you have a real kinship with those guys.
What about you? What would you do to while away the lonely days on the desert island?
I'm gonna go with coconut, just because it's obvious. You can draw a little face on it. I mean, I might not have a volleyball. Volleyball seem good because it's like sort of squishy. Put your head on it. Maybe a pillow, but then it would get dirty. I don't know. I'm gonna stick with coconuts. Yeah.
A tiger. I want a tiger. I want to be friends with a tiger.
Be friends with a tiger that would let you ride around on his back and potentially also talk to you once you started going mad and hallucinating. And then eventually would also probably eat you. But dare to dream is what I say about all of this stuff. As did many of these incredible piratey characters. Huge thanks to super producer Casey Pegram for being here through all of this, through this intentional two-parter, even though, God, it could have been a three-parter, man. The lengths of these are way out of whack. But what are you going to do? Gotta get a vacation at some point. Huge thanks to Alex Williams, who composed our theme, Christopher Hasiotis here in spirit, Jonathan Strickland, the Quister.
Thanks to Gabe Lucia. Thanks to the authors mentioned in today's episode. Who doesn't love to learn more about pirates? Thanks, of course, to Eves Jeffcoat and a behind-the-scenes PCare, folks. This is one of the last things we're recording before some of us hit the figurative road for a week's vacation. And this was a little bit uphill. I've got some
invoice paid, and we have a sale. Currency's in your wallet, and Mom John Cheese is walking out.
Some of the technical difficulties and all the various strange sounds that happened today.
All good, man. All good. It was a pleasure as always. We'll see you next time, folks. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
Today's episode is brought to you by Meow Mix. Looking for a cat food with chart-topping taste? Head to Target and pick up Meow Mix, the cat food causing perdemonium everywhere, with 100% complete and balanced nutrition for various life stages. Shop with Target Circle and save 15%.
Sawbones is a show about medical history.
So talking about animated films.
I wanted to, or you wanted to?
You wanted to. You said I got a lot to say about these. No one reached out to me about my opinions on watching animated movies. And you just wanted to really put everybody on blast. Is that how I understand it?
No, that is not accurate whatsoever.
You don't want to talk about animated
movies. I don't, but now you've put me in this position, so now I am forced to. Last week, of course, we reviewed Osmosis Jones, and I would like to evaluated, explored Osmosis Jones. And I would like to say that my statement that I didn't know who this movie was for is not based on a belief that I don't think adults should or can or would benefit from watching animated movies at all. I watch animated movies. I watch many animated shows with my children, and I enjoy quite a few of them. Not all, but quite a few of them. I think animation is for everyone, contrary to what many listeners believe about me. Osmosis Jones in particular, I'm not sure who it was for, because it didn't seem quite for kids or adults. That was my only point. I didn't know who that was for. If you enjoy animation, please watch it and enjoy it, and know that I am happy that you are happy watching your animated whatever age you are. I think that's wonderful. So,
just for you personally.
Well, I watch
big animations for babies.
No, I watch a lot of animation with the girls all day, and so when it's my free time, I usually want to watch something live action. That is my personal preference, and it is not a value judgment on anything whatsoever. I think we all know, like, I'm a huge fan of Steven Universe, and we watched Apple and Onion together because you were on it, but it was also really great.
You watched some anime?
I watched a ton of anime.
In the past?
Yeah, in the past. I was hugely into Fushigi Yugi growing up, and I mean,
just now
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
But now you put away childish things.
No, I'm just... Stop. I think a lot of people
talked about this past week. You don't understand what I have been through, listeners. Please stop tweeting and emailing my wife about animation. Please. It's all she's talked about over the past week is how mad everybody is at her for not preferring to watch animated work.
Well, no, I think people got the impression that I was saying animation is only for kids, and I was not saying that. And if it came across that way, I apologize. That was not my intention.
You to stop tweeting at my wife.
Well, hello, how you doing?
Somebody to beat up on.
How can I help?
Come at me.
So
and I have the book, Cells at Work. Everybody's been saying, but have you seen Cells at Work? I have that book. Tay got it for me. So, yes, I've not seen it, but I've read it. So, and it's great. Anyway.
Now, the greatest Sawbones controversy of the past 6 months has been put to bed. No one's going to tweet about animation anymore.
Here are the things I've learned on Sawbones. Don't come for fluoride. Don't come for animation.
Yeah.
There are strong opinions.
Very strong. Sydney, we are not talking about, as much as I would love to sit here and meditate about Osmosis Jones for another 30 minutes, that is not what we are discussing this week.
No. We are going to talk about something you had never heard of.
Had never heard of. No, that is correct. And this is completely foreign to me.
This really surprised me. I asked Justin, I was thinking of doing a show on grounding this week.
And I said, I don't know what that is.
And I said earthing.
Which I think is to my credit, because that means that I have self-policed my own social media feeds enough that I don't get inundated with this kind of stuff. Right? That's impressive.
Well, to be fair, part of the reason I know about it is my profession.
Really?
Not social media. Yeah, well, I mean, you know, when you're a doctor in real medicine, fake medicine is asked about a lot.
I'm not saying in comparison to you. I'm just saying as like a consumer of fine medical treatments.
Well, I was just surprised you'd never heard, because it grounding or earthing, whichever term you prefer, has become, it's a very popular, I don't want to already say woo. But,
well, is that early? You tip your hand.
I know, but Gwyneth Paltrow's a fan.
Oh, well, okay. All right, got it.
And a lot of our listeners wanted us to talk about it. Cora, Chris, Paul, Kyle, Whitney, Natalie, Merritt, Mia, Kay, Elena, Macy, Audrey, Lena, Julie, John, Yusuf, Katie, and Adrian all recommended this topic. Thank you. It's a good one because it is very popular, and I guess with what's his face that has his show about being out on the earth now? You know.
Zac Efron?
Yes, that nice young man who has a show about being outside, I believe.
Zac Efron is outside.
I think that's what it's called. I guess he has talked about it recently. So I went into this, by the way, I wouldn't say necessarily with an open mind, because
that ship doesn't sail.
Well, I was already somewhat familiar with the idea of it before I started doing this research, and it never quite made scientific sense to me, like the theory behind it. So I wouldn't say that I was like ready to be convinced, but like I read all the research. I did have, though, an open heart, because my understanding was that this was something that is probably, well, almost certainly harmless in most scenarios, and free, and seemed nice. And so I thought, you know, maybe this would fall into, like, as long as you're not using it as a substitute for real medicine, if you just like doing this seems pretty harmless. Sure. That was kind of the way I entered this topic, thinking that would be my takeaway from it. If you like to do it, why not? But of course, I didn't think about the monetary aspect.
Always got to be a monetary aspect.
There's always got to be money. You'd think, we've mentioned this before, you'd think I have watched enough Penn and Teller to know that there's money. There's got to be money in there somewhere. And then I was disappointed. So, I should know better. How long have we done this show?
Yeah.
So the idea is really simple. Okay, Justin, here's the idea behind grounding or earthing, whatever you prefer.
Grounding is a word, and earthing is not. So I'm going to go with grounding.
We can call it grounding.
Okay.
Humans need contact, physical contact with the earth itself, unobstructed contact with the earth, to balance our bodies, our systems. That is the concept.
Okay.
There are a lot of spiritual aspects to this. Like if you dig back through the history of this concept, there's a lot that connects this to like various spiritualities and faiths and belief systems. I'm not going to talk about any of that because that's not what this show does. We're not talking about the spiritual part. If whatever your faith is, you feel more connected to it by touching the earth, okay, that's fine. I have no part of that conversation. But there's a science part to it that I think is what we need to talk about. The proponents of grounding or earthing, of course, start out by appealing to our ancients, obviously.
Ancient wisdom.
Yes, for the inspiration. And the original connections are pretty vague. It's that idea that, like, well, back in olden times, people didn't have shoes, and they slept on the ground, and they were fine.
Right.
Now,
they loved sleeping on the ground because it was so healthy for them, and they loved not having shoes because it really helped connect them to the earth.
Now, here's the weird thing. This statement, because I hear this a lot, like, people back then were fine. Were they? Were they fine? This is always the problem with this. Were they fine, though?
Yeah, because I think they would probably enjoy the shoes.
No, but they weren't fine because they were dying of, like, infections that now we treat easily with antibiotics or over-the-counter ointments. They were dying of vaccine-preventable diseases. They would get an appendicitis and die because, we didn't have antibiotics or surgery or anything like that. We didn't have we couldn't fix a trauma. You, fall and break a bone, and we're like, well, hope for the best. We can't do surgery. We don't have anesthesia or antiseptic technique. And also, giving birth, cross your fingers. And also, food could be spoiled, but we don't know about spoiled food or food poisoning. And also, the water might be dirty.
I heard someone say, I think it was David Cross, a very long time ago, say, the thing to remember about when you're talking about ancient teachings, ancient wisdom, is that you are referencing things that people thought when they were even dumber than they are right now. So think about that. You're actually talking about people that are dumber than we are in this moment currently.
Well, it's the answer to what did people do before there were vaccines? They died. That's the sad answer. So, I would argue that people weren't just fine when they were sleeping on the ground and not wearing shoes, but I'm not going to necessarily connect it to their lack of shoes at this point.
Right.
So we could put the first, I don't know if you want to say credit or blame for this idea, on a German naturopath, Adolf Just.
What is going on in Germany? I feel like it is flip a coin and see if you say someone's a German, I feel like it is flip a coin whether or not they're going to be a heroic scientist figuring a bunch of stuff out or an absolute madman. I feel like it is always that is all you get. It is fire and ice over there in Germany. Fire and ice.
Well, it's weird because there's a lot of this naturopathic kind of stuff that traces, it's not all of it obviously, but some of its roots to Germany. And then there's also homeopathy, which can trace its roots there.
Yeah.
But then yes, you're right, there are also real scientific advancements. I don't know, but at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, he kind of started popularizing naturopathy in general, but also these beliefs that a return to nature is the way to health, right? Like a return to the way we used to live when we were more connected to the earth. Like natural remedies, raw foods, fasting, just drink a lot of water. There's a lot of focus on clay in his writings, the importance of clay. Like, we've talked about that before. That's an idea. He also had some other ideas, like he thought gymnastics were bad for you because they're artificial. He thought vaccines were poison, and that technology was an affront to nature.
That one, okay.
In addition, he advocated for walking on the ground barefoot and sleeping on the ground as a way to reconnect to the earth. And this was all, by the way, part of his medical but also spiritual beliefs. This was definitely connected to his faith as well. Like, this was a way to be closer to his belief system, was also to return to this simpler way of living. But then it was also supposed to give you good health. So it was like both connected. On a positive note, he was anti-homeopathy.
Great.
Which tells you something about homeopathy. Even this guy knew it was fake. There was also a French agronomist who followed in those footsteps, Matteo Tavera, who wrote a series of letters, and I've read some of them.
BS. So is that the series of letters?
No, it's fascinating.
WTF.
It's the kind of writing that is very lovely. It's almost like it sucks you in, and you're reading it, and you realize, like, I have no idea what I've been reading for the last 5 minutes, but it felt nice in my brain as it resonated there. So I can see how it was persuasive. The idea is that we have this sacred mission on Earth. That's what it's called. And it has to do with the fact that there is a natural electricity in the Earth and also all around us. And we act as like antenna for it. And the way that we can maintain life, I don't know, indefinitely maybe, is to connect with the earth appropriately, ground ourselves with the earth so that the passage of electricity can move through us and we can stay alive. So.
Okay. Sure.
I'm just saying, all of this is what would inspire the guy that we're going to talk mainly about in this episode, Clint Ober.
Okay.
Ober was a cable installation guy in the 1990s. He worked for started, I believe, a major cable installation company, so he understood very well cables, like electricity, that part of things.
As depicted in the headphone cable guy.
Exactly like that, I assume. I've never seen that, but I assume.
It's very dark.
After retirement, he alludes to in his writing some sort of health issue, some sort of challenge that he encountered with his health, and it sent him on this sort of spiritual journey, health journey, around the world to try to like reconnect with himself and understand himself and where he fits in and that kind of thing. All very normal, I think, after facing a big health challenge. In his travels, he describes this sitting on a park bench kind of situation where he's looking around at all the people walking around him, and it occurs to him that the problem is that everybody is wearing shoes. And we all have poor health because our shoes are usually made of an insulating material, rubber, plastic, or something like that keeps us from connecting with the natural electricity of the earth. And maybe if we weren't wearing shoes, we would all feel better. Because, of course, our forebears did not wear shoes and they were fine, although we've established they weren't. Or if they did wear shoes, he allows for this. They were made of like hide, like leather, which is conductive. Right. So we need conductive shoes or no shoes to help us. We need to be grounded, just like a cable has to be grounded in the earth.
I would say, as a rule, that scientific truth does not find you on a park bench. Truth about human experience, I could say. Strength.
A la Forrest Gump.
Thank you, Sydney. Yes, of course. That timely film, Forrest Gump. But I would argue that scientific truth is found in a lab, is found in books. Scientific truth very rarely occurs to one while sitting on a park bench.
I don't know. Wasn't Newton sitting under a tree?
Yeah, but Newton, there's the difference, right? Newton was sitting under a tree. Let's say he was on a park bench. An apple fell out of the tree. Isaac Newton was like, oh, I get it. Okay, here's the whole bit. Let me lay it out for you. Apple fell on me. He's like, oh, God, this hurts. I'm going to take the rest of the afternoon off and then start working on this thing, right?
People like to imagine, it's like House. It's like when House has his House moment in every episode where somebody says something random and he's tossing the ball in the air and he goes,
he catches the ball and he's like, oh my God, gravity.
And I got it. I wish everything worked that way.
It's one of those things that feels like it should be true, right? Like, yeah. This makes sense. You know what? Maybe the problem is all the shoes. Except, what's the problem, Doc? Because we're living much longer now, so it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, you can see where it ties into like his background in like cable and grounding and that kind of thing. But anyway, so if the story ended with like, so he recommended everybody should spend some time walking barefoot and like camping. Oh, okay. But of course, that's not where the story ends. You can't charge people for telling them to walk barefoot. Well, you probably could. I'm sure somebody does. But also, like, you know, doctors might get in the way because we would point out things like, well, you do need to be careful about, like, stepping on things or, like, hookworm or, you know, sleeping outside isn't always an option. So we have to find a way to ground ourselves inside. How can you get grounded and earthed in your house, in the convenience of your own home?
I don't know.
So Ober built a bed, a grounded bed. Basically, he attached a grounding wire from his bed to a rod outside.
Okay.
And then he slept on his bed that was now grounded to the earth. I think like metallic duct tape was involved in this process. And he noticed, after sleeping on this grounded bed, he noticed a huge difference in his own personal symptoms of chronic pain. And he also noticed his sleep was improved. And he wanted to share his discovery, so he made some for his friends. He grounded their beds. And they were all like, you're right. This is great. I love my new grounded bed.
Or you just don't want to insult your maniac friend that came over and tied a wire to your bed.
Then, a couple years later,
his first... while they were asleep, and he didn't ask. That's my theory. I'm just kidding.
His first experiment, and many of these experiments, by the way, are kind of like led by Mr. Ober, but his first experiment was kind of a makeshift. He took like a random group of older people that he found, like he had a nurse help him find old people in pain, and then he grounded half of them and sham grounded the other half. Like, it looked, they thought they were grounded, but they had like a spacer between themselves and the grounded part. Right. Yes, and he published printed, made a PowerPoint. Somehow he shared the results of this, and it was just overwhelming that the people who were grounded had better sleep and better pain, less pain, and the people who weren't.
Well, that should be worse. I feel silly for dogging this guy. That should be enough for you, Dr. McElroy. He did research. It's fine.
So he wanted to share it with the world, of course.
Yeah, me too.
So he found a cardiologist, Stephen Sinatra, who looked at this research and was impressed, and a writer named Martin Zucker, who it looks like writes a lot of these kinds of books. Like, he's teamed up with a lot of different people to write a lot of wellness, we'll use that word, wellness type books. And in 2010, Earthing, the most important health discovery ever, was published.
God, that's a good title, though. You gotta give it up. That's a good title. Who's not gonna read that?
And it got a lot of attention, as you may imagine, since it is the most important health discovery ever. And from other doctors. There were two physicians in Poland who were related, who specifically kind of latched onto this and wanted to do more research in this area after reading this book. And again, if all of this just amounted to people reading a book and for whatever pseudoscientific reason saying like, well, maybe I'll go outside barefoot occasionally, that would not be a big deal. But as I've already said, Ober maintains you need to be able to ground yourself in the house. And so in order to do that, you got to have products, right? You got to have stuff you can buy.
A line of grounded products.
So you can go to their website. There are mats to take with you, like there's the grounded bed idea, which is like a mat that you lay on your bed. You don't have to buy the whole bed. You just like get the grounding mat for your bed. So there's like a grounding mat. There's a grounding pillowcase to put on your own pillow so that you can get the whole set, the whole bed going. There's like a mat you can take, a travel mat you can take with you. There are bands to wear around your body that are supposed to focus on like your gut balance. There are patch kits, which are like little patches that you attach to like electrodes all over your body, so you can just like do a touch up here and there.
Yeah, just a little bit of grounding
as you need it. There's a chair that is called the Ultimate Relaxation Chair that is billed as grounded, zero gravity, heat and pulsating massage relaxation chair for the low price of $3,399.
Bargain.
Yeah. So there are all kinds of things you can buy. And I know what you're thinking is like, but does it work? Because so far all we know is that he did this study. It looked like it worked.
Actually,
this cardiologist and these 2 doctors in Poland agree that it works. So
one of these, where's our credit card? I'm buying this chair.
I want to get into the research, but before I do that, let's go to the billing department.
Let's go. Okay, my chair will just be here in a couple of days, so I do need to go ahead and hurry this up so I can clear space for it.
Okay. Well, and there's a book stuff you start to. They have an EMF free zone system that you can have installed to go. You're already looking ahead. I
just went to the website. Yeah.
And on a side note, the idea of electromagnetic fields that are harming you in your house.
Yeah.
It plays big into all this. That's part of, if you accept that we need to be grounded to be balanced with the earth, and it has to do with the flow of electrons, which I haven't really specified. That's his theory, is that this natural electricity from the earth is in the form of a ton of like free electrons that are floating around on the earth system, on the earth's surface. And the only way that you can get these free electrons into your body is to go like put your bare feet and hands on the earth. And then you get this flow of free electrons into your body that are going to go around and fight all those. That's where things get kind of wild. Like they're going to fight all the free radicals in your body, and they're going to fight all the what else does he say? What you need them as antioxidants. He throws that in there. Like all these kinds of like, well, none of this really.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to say, but then it just comes back to like, will they balance you? Which I don't know what that means either. But the EMF plays a big part in this, because EMFs are the reasons that our electrons are so out of whack, is part of the argument. There are lots of reasons: stress, modern life, blah, blah, blah.
The main thing is...
Yes, and we should do a whole show on EMF because it's fine. But the other thing is adaptogens. He sells something called the Ultimate Adaptogenic Elixir, which says on the page, based on ancient wisdom and sacred science. Sacred science. I don't know how to. That's a lot to unpack, but.
Wow. Can I just read this one bit here?
Sure.
Our ancestors considered them safe. They're talking about plants. The plants are in the ultimate adaptogenic elixir. Our ancestors considered them sacred and superior to all of the plants of the planet, and named them tonic herbs, because they knew that if these plants were grown, harvested, made into extracts, and married, blended and balanced properly, the finished extract elixir would resonate one's innate divine frequency through transference, toning, awakening one's miraculous divine blueprint on all levels, body, mind, and soul. Is there something in this elixir that makes your sentences just absolutely wild, just like clause on clause on clause? Is that necessary to the process?
It's to hide the fact
that was one sentence.
It's to hide the fact that they can't even tell you how it's supposed to work, whether or not it does work or not. They can't even tell you, because nobody.
You're not going to
again, adaptogens are a whole other show, because no one, even the people who are proponents of them, don't know how they work or why they would work or what they would actually do, other than, again, it's this idea that you need to be balanced. There's this weird idea that like health is balance, and I because we do this show, in my mind, I trace it back to the 4 humors. Like what we're really talking about is the humoral system of medicine. Oh, so you want to bring my humors into balance? Well, we already know that's not how the body works. Yeah. But I feel like they're kind of calling to that same idea, that that's really what health is balance. And then I think, again, we're getting into some spiritual things, which do benefit from balance, but that's not medicine. That's something else. Anyway, what does the data say?
I don't know. Tell me.
So there are not tons of studies, I would say. There are studies on this. Not as many as you would think if it was the most important health discovery ever, or whatever they say. But many of the ones that do exist have been funded by Ober.
What do you think the most important health discovery ever is?
I mean, vaccines are way up there.
I think like cell theory.
Germ theory of disease, penicillin.
Discovery of the cell?
Okay. You ever seen those videos of the Black Friday sales where
I mean, I could maybe narrow it down to a top 5. That's a tough question.
That'd be a good episode time. Top 5?
Top 5.
I hope grounding has to make top 5, though. That's important.
A lot of the studies do seem to be the same sort of group of researchers over and over again. So it's not like independent researchers all over the planet are
finding the same.
Right. Not every single one. Some are very small. All are small. Some are incredibly small. There are no like giant, multi-center, hundreds or thousands of participant studies. Some are observational. Some are not blinded or not controlled. There's one that is literally just one guy who is both the subject and the investigator, and then writes about his own experience.
Folks, the study sizes look much smaller than that.
And then there's one that I particularly
0.5, I would say.
There's one that I particularly like, where 8 guys have to like live in a hotel and do toe raises every day, and then have like a lot of blood work done.
Coming this fall. We finally reached the bottom of the barrel. Come watch 8 men do toe raises.
They have to hold barbells while they do it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a little bit more exciting. But they also have to talk to their future spouse while wearing a mask. Amazing.
There's Carol Baskin in that one. Of course, all the studies, because you can link to them from this website. All the studies say it works.
I haven't found one yet that didn't.
No, but it depends on what you mean by work. A lot of the data is well, a lot of it's subjective.
What is.
And that's why when we talk about this a lot when it comes to snake oil, a lot of it is based on testimonial, and like these studies, I would say, are not that far from just testimonials. Like, it made me sleep so much better. My stiffness and achiness was so much better. So it's very subjective. And I'm not saying that these people didn't experience any benefits. It's just that's a really hard thing to measure if you're just asking questions of these participants who knows why they came into this, how were they selected, did they already, like some of them, it seems like were recruited through like massage therapists or those kinds of like, were they already maybe prone, open-minded, so I don't know, but I don't know all that data because I don't have, it's not given to me. But the other stuff that isn't subjective, it's just kind of weird. Like sometimes they did EEGs, which is how we like sort of measure brain activity and brain waves, which can tell us some things about the brain, but not all things about the brain can be found out through EEGs. EMGs, which are like, they're measuring like muscle contraction and like reactivity and that kind of thing through some of them, and like the nerve conduction and how those signals are passing through and where they're getting through. Sometimes they're just doing like surface conduction of the skin, electricity on the skin type measurements. Some of it is live blood analysis, which we've talked about on the show before is fake. Some of them are just standard blood tests. They're just checking like a complete blood count or a chemistry panel before and after various things. And I don't know what to do with any of that. They take all that data and go, so obviously it works. For me, it's weird because it's like if you were trying to lose weight and you did something, like we're talking in a scientific experiment, you did something and you were going to see if it helped you lose weight, and so you measured your head circumference and then did the thing and measured your head circumference again and went, see, I lost weight. And I would go, what does any of that have to, like, how does that prove anything? Like, the measurements don't, I know what those things mean, and I know what they can tell me, but I don't know why they would tell me anything about your pain level or your sleep or
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? There's just random numbers that are thrown out and like, look at the change in the alkaline phosphatase. And it's like, okay. I don't know what that means. So anyway, the data I would say is weak, to put it mildly, and would need to be done appropriately, double-blinded by multiple investigators in different centers who are not already being funded by the guy who's selling products, you know, based on this. What can it help with? What do they say it can do for you? Because we've talked about pain and sleep, which again are somewhat subjective, and you could, you know, we know from this show that you can often sell people things that aren't real that will convince them, you know, through the placebo effect that it did help them with their pain or their sleep. But what about the other things?
I need somebody to make please hire the Animaniacs, get them back together, and I need a song where they're just singing this list that we can play for every one of these, like, panaceas. Anemia, autism, asthma, arthritis, anxiety, burns, and bipolar. It's like, that's just the beginning.
And if you'll notice, it's in alphabetical order because on their website, they just have the whole alphabet there, and you can click on each letter of the alphabet, and it'll tell you all the things that start with that letter that it helps with. So that is why I have it in this order. But as you said, all those things, blood pressure, cold, cellulitis, complexion, circulation, chronic fatigue. Children are listed on there, so it'll help with children.
Listen, I'll try anything at this point, folks.
Depression, digestion, diabetes, eyes, electrosensitivity, frequent urination, fibromyalgia, gum disease, groundedness, hernias, headaches, kidney disease, leg cramps, lupus, Lyme, MS, memory, pets. Pets? Yes, you can ground your pets. Pneumonia, Parkinson's, there are products for that too, of course. Plantar fasciitis, panic attacks, pain, rheumatoid arthritis, strokes, sinus problems, stress, sleep, sex, skin, tendinitis, tinnitus, thyroid, veins, and then these other blocks of quote-unquote multiple complaints in both men and women. And then there's a lot of other even less specific stuff about, like, it fights inflammation, it stops free radicals, it is an antioxidant. And this is when they start to talk about indirect things.
Yeah.
About how because it blocks inflammation, chronic inflammation, that's always the thing, right, with all this stuff. It helps with chronic inflammation, which stops tumorigenesis, which stops...
you name it.
Cancer.
Yeah.
So then the cancer gets thrown in there, but indirectly, because that's where you get really cracked down on.
It's just a nice perk.
Yes.
We're not saying it cures cancer. We're just saying it will fix the problems that cause cancer.
They do mention that you got to be careful with Lyme, and I think they're talking about the concept of chronic Lyme disease with this, because when you start grounding, you can have this, like, inflammatory reaction as all the hidden spirochetes die off. So you got to go slowly with grounding if you have chronic Lyme.
Yeah, that's kind of like when you have two made-up things at the same time. It's kind of like a humidifier and a dehumidifier next to each other.
You just got to be careful.
You're just so careful.
There are lots of testimonials. There's an interview where he was on Goop. He was featured on Goop in an interview. You know they've got to get into grounding. This is so Goop. But one of the... And Goop, by the way, if you're not familiar, is Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle website, where, among other things, she talks about wellness and a lot of questionable medical, pseudoscientific things. But he says, one of the first serious illnesses I dealt with was a hospice patient suffering from crippling arthritis. This is Ober himself. And this is a hospice patient, by the way, which to qualify for hospice means that it is likely that this patient will pass away in the next 6 months.
Okay.
That is likely. He was unable to leave his bed, and his nurse and daughter had to help me lift him out of the bed to install the grounded sheet. A week after my visit, I got a call from the patient who told me that a squirrel had chewed through his ground wire. It was significant for two reasons. First, this man who had been unable to walk was now active enough to leave the house and check the wire. Second, the effect of grounding was so dramatic that he noticed immediately when the connection was disrupted. He later told me that the grounding reduced his inflammation and that the burning pain he felt had finally subsided, and he lived 6 or 7 years longer. So, I mean, there you go. He talks about, like, after these sorts of experiences, he was looking into grounding for fighting age. That's the ultimate, like, all these things lead to one path, which is how do we stop aging and live forever?
Right.
I always find, like, these wellness things end up there. So the deal is that there is no solid evidence that this does anything. I mean, the theory behind it that, like, there are all these free electrons out there and all you have to do is touch the earth and you get these electrons and they only exist on the surface of the earth. Like, which earth? Like grass or dirt or sand? Or what if there's snow? Is that a problem? What about my driveway? Does it matter if it's cement or asphalt? Like, none of that is clear. Our dirt sucks and can't grow anything. Is it okay? Do I need to get some fresh soil? Like, I don't think any of those are answered by, like, what the earth will balance you. And, you know, I know that probably there's no harm in walking outside on the earth, right? Like, I walk outside barefoot a lot. But, you know, you do want to be careful about, like, dead mice?
You never know.
That's what came to mind?
That's what comes to mind for me, from walking outside barefoot and there's a dead mice I step on. Oh my God, that's my whole week.
Well, my mama always said I would step on a bee. So not to run around barefoot.
Okay, go get the supplies and bring them back in a usable condition.
But there are, I mean, I guess it depends on where you live, right? Because, like, there's broken glass. There's, like, the old, don't step on a rusty nail, you're going to get tetanus. That was always my biggest fear growing up because I'm going to have to get another tetanus shot.
Yeah.
You should get your booster anyway, I finally learned. But the point is, I guess there are some risks. I mean, I don't want to engage in hyperbole. There are risks to walking around outside barefoot. And there are risks to sleeping outside, depending on, you know, the weather or where you are. Also, there is hookworm, which we've talked about on the show before, from walking around barefoot.
So isn't fix it completely. He's trying.
That's not the one he's after.
No, guinea worm?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
But
he'll come for hookworm next, is what I'm saying. He's going to wrap up the guinea worm real soon. And then hookworm's next on his hit list.
Absolutely. I have faith. But I don't want to be pedantic. I don't want to say that, like, if all this guy was saying is, I think you would feel better if you stood outside in bare feet, I'm not going to give somebody a hard time for that. You know, it's nice to be outside. I enjoy being outside. I think if people enjoy being outside and also seek medical professionals for their medical problems, I think that's all great. Sure. Please wear your sunscreen. But, like, I think that's all great. But then you get to the products. There's got to be the products. And I mentioned this website where there are products. Of course, if you just do a quick search, there are tons of earthing products out there that you can buy. There are socks you can buy. There are all kinds of special earthing shoes and sandals that you can buy that are made of materials that will conduct the free electrons from the earth into your body in stylish sandals. There are tons of products out there, and that's my problem is twofold. One, it doesn't meet our test here because you can pay a lot for some of that. As I mentioned, that chair is over $3,000, but even like the smaller products they sell are a couple $100 here, $80 there, you know, $50 for these shoes, whatever. So you might be getting ripped off, which I guess if you have all the money in the world is your business if you want to buy special earthing sandals. But not everybody does, and some people are going to read this and think it sounds just believable enough that maybe they'll give it a shot because they're scared and they're sick and they're desperate. Nothing else has worked, and they'll spend money on this kind of thing. And that's
the healthcare system in America is broken, so they can't afford it anyway.
Exactly. And you don't trust the healthcare system, so by way of that, you don't trust your doctors because they're part of the American healthcare system that scares you and intimidates you because it is so bad and broken. So you do this instead, and that's the big part. You do this instead. That's the final point. That's my worry with stuff like this, is if you think you could cure your what in that list do you want to fix? Do you want to fix your MS? Do you want to fix your circulation? Do you want to fix your thyroid disease? Do you want to buy these products to try to, and when I say fix, I'm using this as you shouldn't do this, fix autism. They always throw that in here. It's so, in all these fake medical things, it's so frustrating. Do you want to address neurodivergence by buying a $3,000 massage chair?
People with autism don't need fixed.
Exactly.
We've said it before, but I think it bears saying again, like, different life experiences, they need to be supported just like everybody else on planet Earth. So irritating.
And I think that's the frustrating thing. If this is a spiritual thing, like the German guy was doing it because it was his spiritual belief. Now, he also said vaccines were poison, so I don't think we would have been buddies. But you're selling people something and you're taking their money, but you're also giving them hope, and you might be leading them away from medicine that could actually help them. Like, they could be going to doctors for any of those above diagnoses that I mentioned and actually getting help and getting better, and instead they're wasting their time on Earth and their money on you and your stuff, which, if it's your personal belief, you go sleep outside and walk barefoot as much as you want, but once you start ripping people off, it's not fair.
Then you're on our neighborhood, and we're gonna take him down, take him out.
I don't know if he's gonna. I'm worried he's gonna come for me.
Yeah, this is the problem with doing living people.
But I mean, again, I think that the science is incredibly weak, and if you want to prove that any of this makes sense, you got to do, something else. You got to do a lot more research, and it can't just be the same people who've already bought into it. You have to have open-minded outside researchers to reproduce these experiments on large scales, appropriately controlled, methods, measuring something that actually means something. Like, the data you collect has to be meaningful. It can't just be random lab tests and studies and imaging, and it can't be testimonials. Testimonials don't mean anything.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you would like to buy a secondhand, never-used grounding chair at a much reduced sticker price, please get in contact with me. Thank you, the taxpayers, for the use of their song Medicines as the intro and outro of our program. Thanks for your support.
Hello, junkies. Guess what? My novel, Aliens Phalanx, was nominated for a Dragon Award for the Best Media Tie-In Novel. Also, probably best novel of all time. Who are we kidding here? The Dragon Awards are a set of literary and media awards voted on by fans and presented annually since 2016 by DragonCon for excellence in various categories of science fiction, fantasy, horror novels, movies, television, and games. You can sign up to vote for Aliens Phalanx for free over at dragoncon.org/awards. In the middle of that page is yellow text that says, click here to register, with the here in yellow. Get over there, slap it, flip it, rub it down, register, be ready to vote. Now, it's well known that I don't write the kind of fiction that is currently in vogue for awards. I've always said that awards often go to the right author with the right book at the right time. And the right author cyclical and the right book, it's all over the place with these awards. But the Dragon Award is more of a People's Choice Award. Anyone can vote. You don't have to be part of an organization. You don't have to go to a Worldcon, etc. And since I am well known to be the people's author, it seems like an ideal fit. So if you've read Aliens Phalanx, get thine ass over to dragoncon.org/awards, sign up, and vote for my cadaverous face. If you have not read Aliens Phalanx by moi, what TF man, AF, other acronymic slang, it's aliens. It's a pre-industrial culture fighting against xenomorphs. It's me! Oh my gosh. And I would like to point out, it has the best vomit scene of all time. Movies, TV, doesn't matter. There should be a separate awards for vomit scenes, and I should have swept all of them. Let's now get back to business. Let's jump into our Wayback Machine and travel to the year 2007 when I was writing and podcasting a chapter of a book called Nocturnal each and every week. Here we go with the original Jockey Talk for episode number 28, followed by episode number 28 its own damn self. Enjoy. Welcome to the free podcast novel Nocturnal. This is episode number 28. 1 full hour of all kinds of good stuff. Nocturnal is a podcast-only novel you can't buy in stores and you can't peek at the end. Written and performed by Scott Sigler. More information and more free stories available at ScottSigler.com. This This book contains adult language, mature situations, and lots of violence. And for all of you who bitch that there hasn't been enough violence, this episode is for you. Hello, junkies. This episode is over an hour of pure story, so I'm not going to waste much time here at the intro. Want to let you know there is a reference to a scene from Reservoir Dogs in this episode, so I have a link to that specific scene over at SgtScreed.com. You might want to swing over to SgtScreed.com, check the show notes for episode number 28, and watch that clip before you listen to this episode, if you don't have the movie mostly memorized like I do. To all the U.S. servicemen and their families, Happy Memorial Day. And stay tuned to the end of the episode. We have a quick note on the latest country to fall to Siglerism. Fire up the plaid tanks, junkies! Let's roll! Chief Amy Zoe sat in her office in the Hall of Justice, staring out the window to the night sky. It was foggy outside, which was no big surprise for San Francisco. She couldn't see any stars, just the hazy glow of streetlights and faded, illuminated blurs of skyscraper windows. She almost had it. Almost. Gennady Ivanovich was in her jail cell, a fountain of information that would help her bring down Dmitry Vasilov and end this murderous gang war. She had to find a way to end it fast, because as crazy as it sounded, she had bigger problems than open gun battles between the Russians and the Mafia. She had to deal with Savior. The last time he'd been off the street, San Francisco had become a nightmare, a horror fest, city alleys filled with bodies. And she didn't even want to think about the parks with the savagery committed upon the homeless.
You're going to deliver for...
That was the only way they managed to keep somewhat of a lid on the body count. No one really cared about the homeless. And it had been her fault. Her fault, because she put the case together that sent Jebediah Erickson to the insane asylum. Only after the case had been rolling, only after it was too late, too public to keep him out of that place, only then did Frances Parkmeyer bring her in as his partner. Only then did she learn of the centuries-old secret of the San Francisco Police Department. Savior saves lives by killing the bad guys. Judge, jury, executioner. And a damn good executioner at that. She put Erickson away, and after a few months, the horror began. The killers, Marie's children, they knew he was gone. It took them a while, but they found out. And like cockroaches when the lights go off, they came out of their hiding places. Things went from bad to worse, and kept escalating until Parkmeyer pulled the right strings and got Erickson released from the asylum. Amy knew the secret, and protection of that secret fell to her. Over the years, she'd done what had to be done. She'd roughed up Michael Yo, that paranormal investigator who was getting too close. She'd intimidated people. She'd removed articles from newspaper archives. She'd eliminated evidence. She shielded Savior's every move. She had a few good years left as chief, but she was leaving the most important information the department had in good hands, in the right hands. Sean Robertson would see to it that Savior's work continued. She trained him how to handle it, just like Parkmeyer had trained her. Savior would continue to be protected from investigation, would continue to be protected from any discovery. If, that is, the old man lived. The caller ID on her cell phone said Jack Zoe. Her husband knew better than to call her while she was working. Amy's heart beat a little faster, as did the heart of any parent that receives an unexpected call. Because a parent lives with the ever-present but subdued fear that something could happen to the children. Something could happen when she wasn't there to save them. She answered, "What's up, Jack?" "Hello, ma'am," said a boy. He sounded like a teenager, or someone about to enter his teen years. "Who is this?" "Someone who wants to meet you. I've already met your family." Amy breathed deeply. She was the chief of police, and as such, had made many enemies over the years. Someone had her husband's cell phone. This wasn't a game. She needed to stay calm and assess just how bad this was. "What's your name?" "Rex." "Where are you, Rex?" "I'm at your house. My family and I came to visit your family. You have a very nice house, Mrs. Zoe." "That's Chief Even those unmarked ones? And your family's in a lot of trouble. Let me talk to my husband. Sure. Hold on one sec. Amy waited, her heart hammering in her chest, her stomach a pulsing ball of anxiety. How could this have happened? How? Amy, it's me. Amy sagged deeper into her chair. Jack, she said, her words more of a hiss than a voice. The girls. We're alive, but come home. They said they'd hurt the twins if you don't do what they say. Tears started to stream down Amy's face, although she didn't move a muscle and didn't blink them away. The voice changed back to the boy. I Google Map from your office to your house. Should take you about 18 minutes. At 20 minutes, we start cutting. If you hurt my... A click from the other end of the line cut off her threats. She stood, wiped away the tears, pulled out her car keys, and ran to the door.
Package received. The team are going to work.
Brian Clauser pulled up to his father's house to find his dad sitting on the front steps, Bud Light already in hand. 5 more bottles sat in a sixer at his feet. He wore beat-up jeans, black socks with no shoes, and the ever-present white wife-beater. When Brian got out of the car, his father stood and reached for the front door. Don't bother, Brian said. His father stopped and turned. Well, don't you want to talk? Pookie called, said you'd probably be coming over. That guy's on the phone more than a teenage girl, Brian said. I'm here, but I don't want to go inside, because this won't take long. I know you're not my father. Why didn't you tell me? John Clauser stared for a moment, then shrugged. He shrugged. Brian wanted to punch him right in the face. It didn't matter, he said. It still doesn't matter. You're my son. That's horse shit. I don't even know who the fuck I am. You're my son. I don't give a fuck about birth certificates, adoption papers, or any of that shit. I wiped your ass and changed your diapers. I cleaned up your puke. When you got sick, I felt like someone was chopping at my heart with a goddamn cleaver. You just coughing a sound scared me worse than any fight I've ever been in. No, I'm not finished. I took your ass to school. I hauled you to soccer practice. I watched every wrestling match you ever had, and when someone put you on your back, I had to grab the damn bleachers because it was all I could do to not come out on the mat and kick the other kid right in the head. I'm the one that taught you right from wrong. You think that this shit'll hurt me more than hurt you stuff is bullshit? You have no idea, boy. Every time I had to discipline you was worse than the time before. Then you became a cop and got so wrapped up in work that you forgot to call home, and I had to call your damn partner every day to even know if you were alive. Whatever, my ass. Do you know I've talked to Pookie Chang every day for the last 5.5 years? Every fucking day. Because I needed to know you're alive, that you're safe. But I don't want to get in your way. I don't want to interfere with your life. Pookie sure does like that phone. Forget Pookie. You are my son. You will always be my son. I'll kick the shit out of any man that says otherwise, including you. I don't care who you are, what heroics you pull, or how bad you fuck up. Nothing is going to change that. I wouldn't be so sure. And I'm not your son. I'm just some kid you lied to. It was the right thing to do, and I'd do it all over again. I don't know how you found out, and I'm sorry you did. But you can stash the guilt trips, because I wouldn't change a thing. So how'd it go down, Dad? Did you get a good deal on me in the white slavery market? John sat back down on the porch. The conversation was clearly taking it out of him. He looked weak. The expression on his face, that sagging posture. Brian had seen it only once before, when his mother had died. We had this homeless guy in the neighborhood back then. Harvey was his name. I don't know his last name. It was a different time back then. Not so many homeless as now. The neighborhood kind of watched out for Harvey. He was a Vietnam vet. That made him dirt to the freeloading fucking hippies in the city, but to a lot of us, that made him a hero. We'd give him food, clothes. One day, Harvey just disappeared. We didn't worry about it that much. Sometimes he just went off to different parts of the city, but, he always came back. That time he came back a week later, but he had a baby. Brian thought of Aggie James. What was the connection with homeless people? Yeah? And how much did he charge you? John's eyes snapped up to look at Brian. The eyes were full of pain, and that was good, because Brian wanted John Clauser to hurt. We didn't buy you, you little shit. Harvey begged us to take you in. You gotta understand, Harvey was a real mess in the head. He said he knew your mother and I would make good parents. That bitch wasn't my mother. John's expression suddenly turned from anguish to cold-eyed aggression. Brian felt himself instinctively take a half step back. He could trash his father in all of 5 seconds, but that didn't change an ingrained response from a childhood with a strict father who did what he had to do to keep a wild son in check. John Clauser had always given very clear descriptions of what behavior was acceptable and unacceptable. He drew a fine line in the sand. On one side was good behavior, and if you stayed on that side, the man would move mountains for you. Cross that line, and it was your ass. There was never, ever, we'll let it go this time, but next time you're in trouble. While Brian's friends had always pushed the line with their parents, subconsciously seeing just how far they could take it, Brian always knew what actions would bring consequences. That had helped him stay out of big trouble. While his friends kept doing stupid things, running into trouble at school or with the law, Brian always knew that fine line, and knew when crossing it would bring down the uncompromising wrath of John Clauser. "I'll let that one go, boy," John said in a low voice. "You're my son, but she was my wife. You blaspheme her name again, and I'm going to string your ass out all over this street." That cold voice was a flashback to his childhood, but there was something else in there as well. That was the side of John Clauser, the brawler, the side that other men had seen and regretted seeing, but that Brian had never experienced before. But Brian wasn't going to apologize. Fuck that. "Just finish your story, old man." John Clauser's cold expression relaxed, but didn't return all the way to normal. "We didn't know what to do. I mean, what could we do? We watched out for Harvey, but he was crazy and homeless. We took you from him just to get you out of his hands. And you didn't call the cops. You had an infant, probably kidnapped, and you didn't try and find the kid's parents? Look, kidnapping is some serious shit. We thought we'd see if we could figure out where you came from, talk to Harvey and get some information before we had to call the cops. I mean, he went crazy killing for our country. Watching his buddies die all around him, we felt we owed it to him to at least try and figure it out." "Right. You wanted to help save some crazy homeless guy from a well-deserved felony rap. It's not every day someone brings you a baby, you dumbass. This isn't exactly in the Good Neighbor Handbook. I'm not saying we made the right choice, but that's what your mother and I decided to do. As long as the baby was safe, as long as you were safe, we thought we had a little time to try and make it right. You watch out for the homeless vet by not calling the cops, leaving him free to kid. It wasn't like that, but you had to see him. Harvey he was scared, Brian. He was terrified. I've never seen him like that. Hell, I've never seen anyone like that. He said he had to find the baby a safe home, a safe, loving home, or he'd get into a lot of trouble. He knew your mother couldn't have kids, so he brought you to us. The homeless man knew you guys couldn't have. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. That's what God had chosen for us. We didn't broadcast it or anything, but if people asked us if we were going to have kids, we'd tell them we couldn't. Well, then Harvey brought you. We couldn't help but think maybe it was a miracle. A miracle. Two people totally in love want to have kids but can't, and a baby shows up on our doorstep? What more proof of a miracle do you need? How about making mom able to have kids in the first... Isn't that a more logical miracle than having some homeless guy show up? We didn't question the Lord's way. It doesn't make you pious. That just makes you stupid. So what then? You just walked out and told everyone that... John shook his head. We kept it real quiet. I tried to talk to Harvey that first night, but he wouldn't talk about it. I tracked him down the second night, and he was dead. He'd OD'd on heroin or something. Poor guy. We read the newspapers, we'd watched the news, we waited for any story about a kidnapped baby, but there was nothing. And John shrugged. It doesn't make us good people, Brian, but we were selfish. We wanted a child so bad, there you were. And after the second day, we were already so in love with you, we would have risked everything to keep you. We used half our savings to send your mom away to a cabin in Yosemite for 5 months. We told the neighbor she was pregnant again and she was going to a hospital back east that could specialize, help her have the baby. I'd see her when I could, but I had to work double shifts to pay for everything. When she came home, the neighbors bought it hook, line, and sinker. Everyone commented how big you were for a newborn. We just laughed and said you were going to play for the Niners someday and make us rich. What about my birth certificate? I've seen that. You ask around Chinatown long enough, you flash enough money, you can find a doctor who'll play ball. That's what we did. It was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Your birth certificate just says you were born in this house. So you take in a kidnapped infant and you bribe a doctor. What upstanding citizens you were. What happened next? John shrugged yet again. Well, that's it. We raised you. We loved you. You were the center of our lives, Brian. God delivered you to us, and we spent every day trying to show God that we're worthy. Thou shalt not lie. You ever hear that one, old man? You ever hear the words, thou shalt not lie? Or do you only follow 9 of your precious commandments? forgot about it, he said. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but we did. You were our child. I can't explain it, son. Maybe it was the wrong thing to do, but that was a decision your mother and I made. Brian just stared at John Clauser. Just stared at the man who had lied to him his entire life. He felt himself torn in two directions. Part of him hated John Clauser, hated the man with every fiber of his being. And the other half saw John's pain, remembered all the love in a great childhood, and wanted to reach out to him. The first half, however, was far stronger. You're not my father. You never were. You never will be. John's head dropped, and his body shook a little as he started to cry. Brian turned away, got in his car, and drove off. There was one place left where he could get some answers. Rex tried to relax in a big lazy boy recliner. Sly said it was the chair most like a throne, so Rex should sit in it. Rex's feet didn't quite reach the extended foot pad, so his heels dangled in the space between the pad and the seat cushion. I like this movie, Sly said. These people are so whiny. Just kill them already. Oh, don't worry about that. They die. They watched Reservoir Dogs on Chief Amy Zoe's flat panel TV. It was one of Rex's favorite movies. He'd found it in the Zoe's DVD collection. It would pass the time until she got home. Rex's plan was coming together quite well. Mr. Robertson had called to report that Parkmeyer was dead. Robin Hudson and Stone Mason were next, soon to be followed by Brian Clauser and Pookie Chang. Robertson made no bones that Clauser would be the hardest of them all, but soon, the man with the retarded nickname, the Ninja, would have more enemies than he could count. Rex watched Michael Madsen do a slow shuffle across the screen, straight razor in hand, as the duct-tape cop breathed heavily through his nose. Madsen would soon cut off the cop's ear. Rex loved that scene. He should have thought of that one for Roberta, or for his father. Pierre was upstairs with Zoe's husband and the girls in the girls' room. Rex had worried that Pierre might kill someone, kill them early, but Sly assured him that Pierre could follow orders. Pierre was a nice guy, but not the smartest knife in the drawer. Not like Sly. Sly was real smart, and always full of good advice. What's the name of the guy with the belly wound? That's Tim Roth. The character's name is Mr. Orange. Mr. Orange reminds me of Firstborn. Why? Well, you can't trust him. He's looking out for himself. He's not looking out for the rest of the gang. But Firstborn swore allegiance to me. We need his knowledge. Sly shrugged his big shoulders and turned back to the movie. Sometimes people lie, my king. Don't forget that if something should happen to you, he'd be in charge again. That was a good point. Firstborn had led the Nocturnals for centuries, after all. Maybe I should have killed him. I think you were wise to let him live. Firstborn knows so much. I would have killed him, but that would have deprived home of all of his knowledge. I'm not as smart as you. It was a very smart thing to do, my king. Thanks. But you will have to watch out for him. He's dangerous. Temptation, you see. If he takes you out, home is his again. Although I just can't imagine how we can get by without him. Rex fell silent. He watched the movie some more. Watched Madsen's white shirt blaze in the afternoon sun as he fetched a gas can out of the back of the white Cadillac. Well, what if home wouldn't be his? Rex asked. What if I made it clear that he was out? Like Tom Hagen in The Godfather. You know, not a wartime consigliere. You mean tell everyone that Firstborn isn't the next in line? Rex nodded. Michael Madsen doused the duct tape cop with gasoline. Yeah, Rex said. If everyone knows he can't be in charge again, that if something happens to me, that, well, he'd be killed, well, then his motivation is gone. Sly seemed to think this over, then nodded. Yes, my king, that would work. Everyone follows you if they know there is another leader. That Firstborn would be torn apart if he tried to hurt you. But you need someone you can trust, my king. Someone you can really trust. On the screen, Michael Madsen flicked his lighter. Rex knew what would happen next. Just before Madsen could set the cop on fire, Mr. Orange shot him in the chest, killing him. Sly was right. Firstborn was like Mr. Orange. couldn't be trusted. Can I trust you, Sly? Rex asked. He stared at the snake-faced man. Stared hard. Sly looked down. Rex didn't know if a man with green, pebbly skin could blush, but Sly seemed overwhelmed with emotion. Of course, my king. I will always do your bidding. You suggested we go see Lanza, Rex said. And look how well that turned out. I think you're a better wartime consigliere than Firstborn could ever be. That was bullshit, of course. Firstborn was obviously the best choice for a second-in-command, but Sly was right. Firstborn could not be trusted with such a position. Rex knew that leadership was sometimes about telling people what they needed to hear. I suggested it, but the decision was yours. I knew you could handle yourself well, and you did, my king. Rex nodded. All decisions were his. He would have to train Sly, bring him along slowly. Firstborn had centuries of experience that Sly simply did not. But neither of them were king. Neither of them were destined to lead the Nocturnals. Rex was, and that made all the difference. Bring down the humans. Let's get ready to meet Mrs. Zoe. And call Skeeter again. Make sure he understands to call us if he sees she brought any backup. Pookie sat in his car on Jackson Street, staring at his notepad, mulling the scribbles he just jotted down during a phone call to the office of the San Francisco County Clerk. Didn't really make any sense, but there it was. Rex Deproptichuk wasn't a foster kid after all. The clerk's office found his birth certificate. Place of birth, Roberta Deproptichuk's house. She was the mother. At least on record she was. Clearly, Rex was not her child. He was a Zed. He was one of Marie's children. So if she had a birth certificate, why did she refer to the boy as her foster child? It was plain to see the woman had no love for the boy, perhaps even despised him. Could she have told him he was a foster child just to hurt him? Or had Rex been dropped off one day, just like Aggie James had been instructed to drop off his ward? Her address was on Aggie's list, as was the address of Brian's dad. It was some weird shit. It was time to get some answers from that strange woman, Roberta. Pookie got out of his car and walked up to the now familiar Deproptichuk house. He knocked and waited. No answer. Repeated knocks produced no response. Was she ignoring him? He didn't have time for this shit. He walked to the back alley that led into Rex's bedroom. The window was slightly open. On the windowsill, a shoe print and dried blood. Pookie drew his gun, then quietly walked out of the alley to call for backup. Robin waited for the test results to come back. She sat in her desk chair, pounding out a beat on the edge of the desktop, using just her pointer fingers as drumsticks, whapping away, mesmerized by the repeating pattern. Suddenly, Stone's right hand gently reached down, covering hers and stopping the drumming. She looked up at him. Why did you do that? You've been hammering on the exact same repetitive 16th beat pattern for 10 minutes straight. No, I haven't. I just said it a few times. Stone shook his head. 10 minutes, Robin. I watched and I counted. She shrugged her shoulders. It hadn't been 10 minutes. She knew it, but Stone could believe whatever he wanted. He moved his hand from her drumming fingers to her shoulder. Robin, what do you want? She felt a cold blossoming up in her chest. Did he know? Was he guessing? What are you talking about, Stone? Give it a rest, Stone said. You're on something, and you have been for a while. He took his hand off her shoulder and held it in front of her, palm up. Let's have it. She looked down at the ground, not moving, not speaking. Stone shook his open palm once. Robin slowly reached into her lab coat pocket, took out the vial of bennies, and handed it to him. He held up the vial and read it. Honestly, Robin, a carafe or two of black coffee wouldn't do the trick. You don't understand. There's just too much going on. It's too crazy. Brian and Pookie need to go home, Stone said, cutting her off. I don't want to hear your excuses. But this is my lab. I work here, not you. I said go home. Now. the results and call you when they come in. Go home and wait for these to wear off, then sleep. Until then, pet your dog, eat some food. Robin opened her mouth to protest, then shut it. She'd been caught.
Okay.
Dinner, Cam.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion at your stick-up cam.
That was that. And by none other than her mentor, the one man whose professional respect she constantly sought. She stood. Do you have any more of these at home? Stone asked. Robin shook her head. Good. Get going. We'll talk about what an idiotic choice this is after you've had a few hours of real sleep.
You don't have to be a government or a corporate...
He said, his finger pointing to the door like a snappy military salute. Robin hung her head, grabbed her coat, and walked out the door. The call for backup brought 2 cruisers, each with 2 uniformed cops. He knew them all, of course, especially Steve and Steve, who had been partners for going on 10 years. Steve number 1 was Stephen the Breeder Kilbride, the man with 8 children. Steve number 2 was Steve Staples, the guy who always brought his band Brown Julius to the annual police cruise on that old Liberty ship, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien. The other car held Brad Big English Wheeler and Gretchen Howell. Big English was an immigrant who, despite 7 years as a U.S. citizen, still talked in a thick Cockney accent. Gretchen was pretty hot for a cop and did her best to dumb down her looks while on duty. After they'd each downed a half-dozen shots of Tuac on last year's cruise, Pookie had made out with her in the O'Brien's loud-ass engine room. Neither of them had mentioned the incident again. As far as Pookie knew, Gretchen's hubby had never found out, and he wanted to keep it that way. The blood on the windowsill was dry. Whatever caused that blood to be spilled had happened at least 6 hours ago. Pookie knew there wouldn't be an answer, but he knocked on the front door again anyway. This is the police! Please answer the door! Nothing. We have reason to believe someone is injured inside this house. We will break down the door if you do not answer. Still nothing. Pookie nodded to Big English and reared back with his size 14 foot and smashed the door open with one kick. The cops entered the narrow hallway, Big English leading the way, Pookie right behind him. They went one room at a time. Living room, nothing there. Master bedroom. Big English peeked in and immediately staggered backwards, gun straight out ahead of him. His pale face looked even paler, but he said nothing, and he didn't shoot. Pookie had been playing this game long enough to know what caused such a reaction. A body. Probably a messy one. Pookie peeked in the bedroom himself. Yep, messy. A man was face up, spread eagle on the bed, his hands and feet tied to the bedposts. His neck was a raw mess of flesh. His blood had spread all over the blue blanket. The edges of the bloodstain were dry, but not the middle, not the areas right on the sides of his neck and under his head. A fleshy, long pink thing stuck out from below his windpipe. What the hell is that? Big English said. That is a Colombian necktie. Someone had cut a hole in the man's throat, reached in, and pulled his tongue back through that hole. A tongue is about twice as long as what you can see in the mirror, the thick part going farther back down the throat. The bloody, fleshy flap that hung out of the hole almost reached down to the man's sternum. Easy, Big English said. I'm guessing that's Mr. Depravdichuk, Pookie said. Steve and Steve, finish the room. Kilbride and Staples moved into the bedroom to check the closet, farther into the house. Nothing in the first bathroom, but the second one showed a pair of bloody footprints leading out from under the closed door, down the hall, into Rex's room. The footprints were dry. "Open the door, Biggs," Pookie said. "Aye. Do your fucking job," Pookie said. "Now!" Big English stepped up and opened the door. He looked in, then immediately turned, fell on his knees, and started vomiting. Another body, Pookie knew, and even messier than the first. When he looked in, he saw why Big English had tossed his cookies. Roberta Dubrovnichuk was dead, and she hadn't gone pleasantly. Blood covered the bathroom. Giant long splatters of it angling up one wall and down another. Even blood on the ceiling. Dried blood streaks sheeted the mirror, the shower curtain, the toilet seat, and the toilet bowl. The source of all this blood? Roberta, handcuffed to the shower rod by her right hand. Her left arm was gone just below the shoulder. The stump, a ragged bouquet of torn flesh and ripped cloth. A massive, narrow gouge ran down her left temple, all the way down past her missing left eye to the bottom of the socket. Someone had handcuffed Roberta Dubrovnichuk to the shower curtain rod, then gone to work on her with a chainsaw. Scarface. Pookie had seen the movie at least 100 times. Someone had done Roberta, just like the chainsaw scene from Scarface. Tard looked a lot like part of a gnarled tree trunk. Golden Gate Park had many Australian tea trees that lined the sides of the walking paths, foot-thick trunks twisting corkscrew-like back on themselves, creating a thick patch that any little boy worth his salt would instantly declare a fort that would stand fast against all sorts of imagined enemies. There were no lights this deep in the park, just the illumination of a half moon filtering through the tall pines reaching above. Firstborn himself could be standing right there, and he wouldn't even know Tard was around. Tard looked an awful lot like wood, but that didn't stop his heart from kicking like a mule, stop his blood from hammering through his body, and didn't stop the adrenaline rush that made it so hard to stay still. So this is what it was like to hunt. No wonder Sly always wanted to do it. Sly was so smart. Tard had never hunted before. He couldn't stop his toes from wiggling. His toes never wiggled. He was chameleon after all, and he could sit still for hours and hours. He stilled his toes. He moved only his eyes, watching the prey move down the dirt path, move towards him. Teenage humans, a boy and a girl, holding hands. No one would hold chameleon's hands, and that wasn't fair. Why should they get to do that? He had always wanted to punish the people he saw, the people holding hands, kissing, but he had never really entertained the thought, because Savior killed those that hunted randomly. But Savior wasn't out there anymore. He was in a hospital. The teenage couple walked closer. They would step right in front of Tard's hiding spot, maybe only a foot away, just to grab away. Tard's heartbeat kicked up another notch. So exciting he could barely see. Would they run before they reached his spot? Would they sense him somehow? He had never killed before. Well, not since he'd been a little boy in the groom's walk, and not by himself, but that had been so long ago. He'd never killed in the wild. Fear of Firstborn and fear of Savior had always kept him in check, but Firstborn wasn't in charge anymore, and Savior was gone. This was it. Tard, chameleon, was really going to do this. He held his breath as the couple moved within 5 steps, then 4, then 3. When they were only a few feet away, Tard reached out cat quick, one rough, gnarled hand wrapping around each mouth, and he yanked them back into the dark wooden patch. Brian pounded on the front door. He hit it so hard the paint chipped. That should have hurt his hand, but he didn't feel a thing. He couldn't bring himself to hit his father, but the men in this house were not John Clauser. He pounded again. 2 seconds later, the door opened, And there stood Adam Jessup. Black combat boots, black jeans with a silver-studded leather belt, silver bracelets and rings. His outfit looked identical to the last time, except now he wore a black Trivium Band t-shirt instead of the one that had read Killswitch Engage. Not you again, Adam said with a sneer. You ain't getting in this time without a warrant, yo. You got a warrant? If by warrant, you mean will I kick your bitchy little ass if you don't let me in, then yeah, I got a warrant. Adam laughed. Man, just give me a reason to smash your face in, cop. Just give me... Brian threw a short right jab. Adam's head snapped back, and he stumbled into the foyer. He looked a little shocked. Brian stepped inside the house and kicked the door closed with his right heel. Adam's hands shot up to his bleeding nose. He looked at his fingers, at his blood, then snarled and reached to the small of his back. As he brought his hand back out, Brian slid forward, grabbing Adam's arm at the wrist. Adam's hand held a silver .22 caliber Derringer. Holding Adam's wrist, Brian grabbed the back of the man's neck and snapped him forward, landing a headbutt that echoed off the foyer's walls. Adam sagged. As he fell, Brian easily removed the Derringer from Adam's now weak hand. You might want to stop, Brian said, pocketing the weapon. I mean, I could do this all day, but your face doesn't look like it's having such a real good time. Adam blinked slowly. He groggily rolled to his hands and knees, trying to rise. I want some answers. The longer it takes me to get them, the more fucked up you get. He snapped a left-footed kick into Adam's ribs. Not as hard as he could, but hard enough to knock the man onto his side. Brian reached back for another kick, but stopped when the woof of a silenced gun coincided with a shredded white spot appearing in the polished marble floor between his shoes. Splinters of marble shot into his inner feet and ankles, right through his shoes, like deep, high-powered bee stings. That will be quite enough, Alder Jessup said. Brian managed to keep his feet planted. He looked up on the stairs to see Alder leaning against the polished wood railing, holding his cane in both hands. The cane's tip pointed to the broken spot between Brian's feet. Alder moved his hand slightly, raising the tip to point right at Brian's chest. A cane gun? Brian said. Seriously? Just sit down where you are, Alder said. You're here without a warrant. You just assaulted my grandson. I've got 4 more shots in this cane. I will kill you where you stand. Brian looked hard at the old man. The guy was so frail, he couldn't even stand on his own. Without the cane, he had to lean against the rail just to keep from falling. Yet the man's hands looked rock steady, as did the barrel of the cane. Brian sat down and started taking off his shoes and socks to deal with the marble splinters in his feet and ankles. His socks were already soaked with blood. Alder eased himself down until he sat on the steps, halfway between the foyer and the second floor. The cane gun rested on his right knee, barrel still pointed at Brian. A simple move, but it meant that Brian would have to cover 20 feet just to reach him. Considering the accuracy of the shot the old man had placed between Brian's feet, there was little doubt Alder would get him at least once, probably twice, if not with all 4 rounds. Why did you come here? Alder said. I want answers, Brian said. I want all the answers. I'm tired of jacking off with this case. You and your boy are going to tell me who the fuck Jebediah Erickson really is, how long he's been the savior, why he kills Marie's children, and why he would try to kill me. Adam stood, wincing from the pain in his ribs and wiping blood away from his face with the back of his hand. He tried to kill you, Alder said. He tried to kill a police officer. I find that hard to believe. He did. He fucking shot me. Did he try to kill anyone else? Anyone who was with you? Brian shook his head. No. And that was weird. He could have killed all of us. Took out 5 cops like it was as easy as wiping his ass. He could have killed all my friends, but he only tried to kill me. Alder and Adam exchanged a nervous glance. He shot you, yo, Adam said. I don't believe it. Show me. I'm not going to strip for you, you little emo pervert. Show us, officer, Alder said. Consider it a small payment towards your answers. Brian looked at Alder, then at Adam, and then back. He shrugged, and without standing, he pulled off his black sweater, exposing the bandage on his shoulder. One pull removed that. Brian stared defiantly at first Adam, then Alder. Adam took 2 steps forward, but stopped well short of Brian's kicking distance. How long ago did he shoot you? A couple of days, Brian said. Could have been worse. Where? Adam asked. In my shoulder, you idiot. Can't you see it? No, Alder said. We cannot. Brian twisted his head to look at his shoulder. There was no mark, no scar, nothing. That didn't make any sense. He held up his hand, the one he'd cut when chasing Xavier up on the roof after the murder of Marco Gastineau. No mark there either. Not even the tiniest sliver of a scar. That's weird, Brian said. Grandpa, he's one of them! Kill him! Brian heard Robin's voice in his head. They all have the same mother. One of them. He was one of them. He was one of Marie's children. Yeah, Gramps, Brian said quietly. Just do it. Just pull the trigger. Grandpa, yo, give me the cane. If you won't do it, I will. Shut up, Alder said. But Grandpa, I said shut your mouth, Alder roared. Such a huge voice coming out of such a frail body. It made both Adam and Brian fall instantly still. Detective Klauser, Alder said, his normal old man voice once again in place. You said that Xavier tried to kill you. He never fails, but yet, here you are. Why didn't he finish the job? The marble floor felt cold on Brian's ass. He reached down to his left foot, pulling another small marble shard out of the bloody skin. Because I stabbed him. Stabbed him. I know the man well. That will not stop him.